Good afternoon, everyone. I am Luisa Sileni and I represent IPLE, which is the Institute for the Professional Training of Construction Workers in Bologna. I'd like to welcome all participants to this conference. This event is part of Innoveas project, which is relevant to the topic capacity building programs to support implementation of energy audits in the 2020 Horizon program. Innoveas is a 36-month project. It has involved 6 countries and 10 partners that have provided a long-standing expertise and experience in the field of energy efficiency. As a partnership, we had addressed the many challenges that energy culture often has to face. Later in the conference, there will be a detailed description of Innoveas project and the lessons learned by this project. Today, we have a very full afternoon of discussion. We can see the agenda and the several speeches that are part of this final conference. We have involved experts who will provide a scenario of energy transition at the European and national level. An expert from the European Commission who will present strategies and policies concerning energy transition. The project partners who will illustrate relevant aspects of Innoveas project. Representative of the project that have deal with the issues of energy transition of small companies in other product sectors. Today we have a distinguished guest here, so now I leave the floor to our first speaker, Professor Filippo Busato. He is president of ICAR. ICAR is an Italian Association of Air Conditioning, Heating and Refrigeration. Professore.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me well. And I will now start by sharing my screen with my presentation. So my presentation will be about energy. Let me say energy, a question mark. I hope everybody can hear me well. And my presentation will last about 15 minutes. I hope it is fine with our audience of today. So why I just chose this title? Because energy is a question mark towards our future. Energy is a very important matter, as everybody knows, since the war began. So addressing themes of energy policies and energy consciousness is a tough task. And this particular matter can be substantiated from an historical perspective and also forecasted at different levels. The levels are those of institutional, the government, so the policymakers, can be addressed about energy specialties, such as standardization, technicians, but energy is also a matter of consumers. So why I chose this title, Energy, a question mark, because energy is
Filippo, non vediamo la presentazione ancora.
Scusatemi. Is it okay now?
Okay, fine.
So, sorry for this small trouble. So, why I chose this title, Energy, a question mark, because energy is a very important question mark, and it is a question mark because it involves, from an historical perspective and from the forecast point of view, different levels. The levels at institutions and governments, so the policymakers, the energy specialties, such as technicians or technologies, and the energy as about consumers, since consumers are the first driver to energy conversion and to energy utilization. My presentation will be divided into three parts. The first part is about the energy consumption in an historical perspective and possible forecast for the future. The second part is about the energy consumption and saving, underlining a very important matter that is the one of rebound effect. And final point, the technology management and consciousness, different levels to address the energy policies and energy behavior in the next 25 years at least. First of all, the energy consumption into an historical perspective from the right. It is about 1.5 million years. The humanity consumed 400 billions of ton oil equivalent of energy. Of this 400 billions of tons of oil equivalent, 300 were non-renewables at human scale. Let me say, fossil fuels were about 3/4 of the total energy amount consumed by man since the rising of humanity 1.5 million years ago. Here in the chart, you can find a brief description of what happened from 1965 to from 2020. The energy demand of fossil fuel has almost tripled in the last 50 years. This that you can see on your right side is the Garda Lake, the biggest lake in Italy. It has a total volume of approximately 50 cubic kilometers. That means that if we fill it with oil, we can sum up to something around 50 billion of ton oils equivalent. Why I'm showing you this picture? Since about 300 billions of ton oil equivalent consumed in 1.5 million years, 1/3 was consumed in the last 10 years. A further 1/3 will be consumed in the next 7 years. So if Garda Lake was filled with oil, it would be approximately 50 billion ton oil equivalent. So we have an amount of 6 lakes burnt in humanity. So 6 lakes burnt in 1.5 million years and 2 lakes in the last 10 years. That means an Olympic pool of olive oil, of crude oil every 10 seconds. Second point is the rebound effect. So what is the rebound effect? Is the effect that is running against energy saving. So the reduction in expected gains from new technologies that increase the efficiency of resource use because of both behavioral responses or other systemic responses. The two most important responses to energy savings in terms of the rebound effect is the first one being that the more efficient is the use of the energy, the more economically viable for more users and for more uses. Energy efficient technology also means that users expected savings from the technology adoption itself, not even from the correct behavior. So there is a misunderstanding among the users that energy is only a matter of technology and of policy. On the other hand, we know that energy consumption and energy saving is not only a matter of technology, but it's also a matter of management, political decisions, and behavior. About the rebound effect, we have a direct example for the rebound effect. If we, for instance, we increase the energy efficiency in the washing machines, in clothes washing machines, we do not obtain the final result of reducing the energy consumption for clothes washing. We reduce the specific consumption of energy for clothes washing because more clothes will be washed. And this is empirically demonstrated. The second example of the rebound effect that is an indirect effect. It is a very important effect that involves buildings, for instance. It is an indirect effect. The thermal insulation of buildings means that the dwellings are heated at higher temperatures and continuity because the dwellers thinks that it is only the technology to provide the energy saving, not their behavior or energy policies or management. Technology, management, and conciseness are the most important elements that needs to work together towards energy efficiency, because the energy conservation comes from these three aspects, from technology, from behavior, and from management. We cannot take one apart from the other, and we cannot consider that technology as only can provide energy efficiency or only behavior. But it's the synergy of these three aspects, and they can multiply their effect. So the effect of technology is multiplied by the effect of behavior, that is multiplied by the effect of the energy management system. Technologies. What can we say about the technology? That the renewables are, despite their name, renewables are not new. They are well-established technologies for producing and supplying the energy demand. The second aspect is the aspect of management. The most important thing about management as renewables were for technology is the fact that measurement and verification is as much as important as an efficient design. This means that we need to implement protocols of energy measurement and verification systems, such as the ISO 50. Implementing those protocols means to be stuck to the measurement and verification in the energy management. So we really need to measure and verify how efficient. We have the standards, we need to implement those. Third element about conciseness. Energy is for people and energy is moreover of the people. Prices, the market, the evolution of energy systems, but must be acknowledged from people. So energy needs to be distributed. In the future of energy systems, there is no monopolium of energy and there's no oligopolium of energy. There must be democratic energy and energy for the people, and energy sustained by the people and managed by the people. The present situation and the future, what can we say? What is the outlook that we can give to the future of energy? Fossils can't be the fuel. Can't be the future. Fossil fuels can't be the future. We know this not only since the last war, but we need to know and to admit that we know this since 1973, since the first war of Kippur. We know that fossil fuels can't be the future because they are not so viable economically. They are very volatile, as you see in the plot about the crude oil prices. And they're not safe, they're not environmentally sustainable, because if we want to grow the planet, we need to grow without fossil fuels or trying to eliminate as much as we can the fossil fuels. ICAR, which I represent here, is a member of REVA, that is a European Federation of HVAC and for air conditioning and refrigeration associations. Those two companies, those two associations contribute to the consciousness with a high quality network for HVAC and R efficiency. So what can we do? We can work within our topic, our specific knowledge to improve energy efficiency in HVAC and R. The energy system is changing. We must acknowledge this, since the prosumers that we had 10 years ago are becoming the controllers and the tuners of the green power flows. This is about electricity, especially because it's very volatile and very difficult to store. So the energy system is changing. We must acknowledge and contribute to the changing of the energy system. How can the energy system change? With implementation of artificial intelligence for energy systems. This is now the present. There are several European and international experimentations going on in universities about the artificial intelligence for the energy system, for tuning and controlling the green power flows. This is really the future. We must connect different systems. We must connect users and producers in order to give the floor to artificial intelligence in controlling the energy system. So I thank you for your attention, and it was a real pleasure to give this short speech to you.
Thank you very much, Professor Busato. Your presentation, your perspective, and also the presentation of current and future situation was very interesting for all of us. Thank you very much. And now, to continue our discussion, I'd like to leave the floor to Oronzo D'Aloisio, Project Officer of SINEA, the European Climate, Infrastructure and Environment Executive Agency. Oronzo, the word is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon all. Can you see my presentation?
Okay, we can see your presentation.
Okay. So I will be very brief, conscious of time. I wanted to thank you very much for organizing this final conference. I'm the project officer of the Innoveas grant that was implemented by the Consortium and led by IPLE and Luisa. So my introduction was to really bring just the relevance of energy efficiency in the current context, and also more specifically in the sector of industry and SMEs, which is where the project seeks to bring an added value. Energy consumption, as you can see, is relevant because industry and services together represented in 2020 40% of the final energy consumption. Transport that would rise up to above 60. Which initiatives has the Commission taken to reduce energy consumption? Well, first of all, the EU Green Deal that was announced in 2019 and that set as goal climate neutrality by 2050, and that will require full mobilization of all industry actors, especially the energy-intensive ones. The EU industrial strategy that focused on the twin transition, setting as priorities for companies in the coming years, the green and the digital transition. And finally, the Repower EU communication, which is expected to be adopted after tomorrow on the 18th of May. And with that, the Commission wants to reduce the short-term dependence and use of fossil fuels by boosting energy efficiency and increasing renewables. One of the instruments that have been identified in the recent years as to enabling factors that conduce companies to switch to the green transition are energy audits. Energy audits, in fact, can fill in the information gap that the company may have on what is currently consuming and what could be done to become more energy efficient and, if possible, move to renewables. A study that we conducted internally, however, showed that even after an energy audit, the savings that are concretely implemented by companies remain low. This can, of course, have various reasons, but that is why, for example, we fund initiatives such as the Innoveas project. One of the very recent and concrete initiatives that the Commission has launched is 50 for 55 PAC, which is the biggest ever launched revision PAC from the Commission in terms of legislation. It touches upon mainly energy and climate. And to go back to what we were saying before, it's a little bit the implementation and the follow-up on the Green Deal. So these changes, these new directives and regulations will really make sure that policy follows what was promised in terms of targets of energy efficiency, renewables, and reduction of CO2 by 2030. I would like to just focus on one very small possible change that there will be, which is linked to energy audits. In fact, the Energy Efficiency Directive is part of the Fit for 55 package, so it is a directive that is likely to change. It is currently in the Parliament, and the trilogue is expected to be concluded maybe by the end of this year, possibly beginning of next year. Amongst the various changes that there may be, that are likely to be in the revised EED, Energy Efficiency Directive, there is a point on energy audits, because currently Article 8 of this directive imposes an obligation to companies that are bigger than SMEs to undergo energy audits, and for member states to have incentive schemes so that also SMEs undergo energy audits. What will change is that the obligation will be linked to the energy intensity and then energy consumption of the company, and no longer on its size. An additional interesting point is that there will be 2 additional minimum quality criteria for energy audits, because quality could also potentially be one of the reasons why then companies do not fully act upon the results of the energy audit. So 2 new minimum quality criteria will be introduced that will be compulsory in all EU member states. And this will be that the energy audit has to clearly identify energy efficiency measures to decrease energy consumption, and that you will have to clearly identify the potential for production and, by definition, self-consumption of renewable energy. So one of the funding instruments that help on the ground actually to provide recommendations to policy, but also to then really work with companies to see how do they react to these upcoming changes, to test a little bit, is the LIFE program, which is the continuation of the first Intelligent Energy Europe and then Horizon 2020 energy efficiency part. In fact, the LIFE program, which traditionally had 3 sub-programs, now has a 4th one, which is the clean energy transition sub-program, and that's where we operate as a team. Good to know, this year actually the LIFE program has its 30th birthday. In fact, it was born in 1992, and for this there are here in Brussels, for those who are, there will be at the end of the month, on the 29th, a big event organized for this. The Energy Transition Sub-Program is a very market uptake program, so it's really looking to support initiatives locally, to work with local level. And part of it is its funding rate is 95%, and the indirect cost at a flat rate of 7%. The 2022 call will be published tomorrow. You may be aware that there is the info day scheduled for the end of this week, for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The clean energy transition one is on Friday, so I invite you all to follow the event. And with regards to the private sector for industry and SMEs, I can already anticipate a little bit, which is that there will be some continuity with the 2021. This is very likely to be the case. So there will very likely be again the chance to propose ideas regarding energy audits and energy efficiency with regards to companies. As I said, this is a little slide that highlights what I was saying about the info day with the hyperlink where you can go. And that was all from my end. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Ronzo, for providing us with some very useful information on European strategies and policies, and also on LIFE program. Thank you very much. Now, before moving on to the next topic on the agenda, we have a new guest. So we are very glad to invite Nadezhda Amarokulova to introduce the topic of United Nations support for SMEs in the field of energy efficiency. Nadezhda is a project officer of the Sustainable Energy Division of United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. Nadezhda, are you here? Yes.
Yes, I do hear. Do you hear me?
Yes.
I'm trying to share my presentation. Let me just one more time see if I can. Oh, I have. Do you see my screen?
No, not in the moment.
I apologize for this technical issue. I don't know. Again, would it be possible from the organizer's side to share my PowerPoint slides? Because I don't seem to understand why this is not possible to see.
Okay.
I do apologize for this technical issue. We seems to solve it. But,
we can see your slides here.
sorry, I don't hear you well.
We can see your presentation.
Oh, okay, great. So then I can start.
Yes.
Is it fine?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Great. Thank you very much. Again, I apologize for this technical issue. My name is Nadezhda Hamrakulova. I work in United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. I'm very much glad to participate in this event, and thank you for inviting me to this conference. I would like to share from the perspective of the United Nations what we do and how we work in order to support the SMEs in delivering those who are working in the area of energy efficiency and renewable energy. So as was said already by previous speakers, that the SMEs also are important because they're not on the policy side, but on the behavioral side, and they could be very much also the drivers into facilitating the energy transition. At least this is how we are also seeing the influence and also the possible impact from the side of the SMEs. Again, also this sector was, like the other sectors, was heavily affected by the pandemic of COVID-19, but also now to the more recent energy crisis. And due to the, let's say, smaller size of SMEs, they could be more also affected to those changes, and that's why the certain adaptation could be done in this regard. What the UN is doing is that we started to work again at the time of the beginning of pandemic with several other UN agencies, such as UNCTAD, United Nations, Department for Economic and Social Affairs, the other regional commissions for Africa, for Europe, Latin America, Asia, and we together started to work in the area or the clusters that would allow the SMEs to have the access to finance, to technologies, to the markets that were changing also. And each of these agencies have different approach to work into, let's say, several components of the bigger project. From the UNEC side, we work on helping MSMEs in developing countries and the countries with economies in transition. And one of the major activities was to prepare the guidelines and best practices for those SMEs who are working in the area of energy efficiency and renewable energy. So these guidelines helped us to also look from a regional perspective on what could be helpful for the SMEs in this current conditions, how already existing cases and best practices could be used by other SMEs. These guidelines were originally developed and then also updated with adding more cases and practices, and we had online training for the representatives of SMEs, also for the representatives of government who would work with SMEs and other stakeholders. Based on these guidelines, there was published information and publication on the assessment of business environment for SMEs. Again, like I said, the examples of best practices and cases, but also the practical solutions or measures how to help the businesses to access the financing markets and the available technologies, and as well as to provide recommendations on how to move forward. That was done for the regional scale. However, we also had the more developed, what we called customized guidelines for the MSMEs in several countries like Albania, Armenia, Georgia, Kyrgyzstan, North Macedonia, and Moldova. And again, we had the workshops for representatives of each of those countries. I would like maybe just to share a little bit what type of recommendations were coming from the different national studies. And again, I fully agree with what previous speakers were saying, that we are here to see the energy not only from perspective of the policies and the government, but also from a perspective of behavioral response. So all the recommendations were also looking from a perspective of what the government on the financial sector could provide for SMEs, but also what SMEs themselves can do in order to operate in the market of energy efficiency and renewable energy and to be more successful in these sectors. So, for example, I will not list all the recommendations. And for example, from a perspective of the government, it was in North Macedonia, it was indicated that increase on the use of the preferential laws for energy efficiency and renewables would be at the same time looking at innovation funds and programs. At the same time, the SMEs could also try to implement from their side to create partnership in order to have more better and easier access to various resources. And other countries, for example, like in Georgia, it was looking into how the government can help the SMEs also with tax waiving or the establishing specific measures and conditions, but at the same time, how to provide the guidance for them, how for the SMEs, how to overcome the crisis in the short-term and longer-term perspective. So we have also some recommendations from Albania, which again looked at the scaling up, the instruments to support the business and the innovative, also innovative different schemes. We were looking also how in Kyrgyzstan could be provided the possibilities for SMEs to succeed and what could be done in terms of from the side of the government again, but also from side of SMEs, if they if and how they can provide, they can assure, let's say, the facilitation of access and gaining possibilities for their activities, but also that the government would introduce different strategies for companies. In Armenia, also, again, from two ways, communication that would look also how the businesses can be supported, but also how what the businesses can do to overcome the crisis from their side. And the same would be in Moldova, which looked from more in introducing the incentives, again, to encourage the investment, the incentives to purchase the energy efficiency technologies. More information about this project you can find on our website, and here is the link. I also heard from the previous speakers who were speaking about the energy audits, and we do have another project also on energy efficiency where we had trainings for different stakeholders, but also for representatives of SMEs on the monitoring and verification. So on that side, if you're interested for more information, that is also available on our ECE website. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you to you. Nadezhda, your perspective was really interesting. And now I leave the floor to our next speaker, Patrick Crayon, a partner in the Innoveas project, who will describe to us a new approach to energy efficiency in SMEs.
Good afternoon. You know, when we started this project, which is about encouraging or increasing the uptake of energy audits by SMEs, the first thing that comes to mind is that doing more energy audits on its own is of no use. You have to follow up on the audit and implement the recommendations. You have to find the money to finance the projects, etc. So while it's true that doing more energy audits is potentially a useful thing, it's only a part solution to a bigger problem. So really the first thing that we did was to say, okay, let's look at this bigger problem and look at how to encourage SMEs to address the bigger problem. And in doing so, this will increase the adoption of energy audits. So this really was a starting point, changing question, you know, saying, and that was part of the new narrative that we speak about, and that is the title of this, was actually changing the question that we ask. And really what I'd like to, this led to a meeting in November of 2020, where we spoke of a manifesto for massive change. And what we had found out is that even in the case of big companies who are obliged by law to carry out energy efficiency audits, the audits are often not implemented. The recommendations are ignored. So this was of great interest to us. You know, why is this happening? Because under these conditions, where you have projects that are viable and are well argued and presented by the auditors, and when these projects are being ignored by the big companies that can benefit from them, how on earth can we expect SMEs to actually fall into this way of behaving, conducting audits and getting recommendations which they might not be able to act upon? So really the epiphany for me was in looking at an overview of a very good energy agency, a Nordic agency, which gave an overview of all the audits it did over the years, etc. And just by doing a simple back-of-the-envelope calculation on this, we suddenly realized that, you know, if we are to audit every company in Europe between now and 2050 just once, the production in terms of the number of audits done by these agencies is going to have to increase by a factor of 100. And we're just talking about doing the audits. We're not talking about recommendations or anything as well. And so one of the things that it showed us is that being an energy auditor is a kind of a lousy business. When we looked at the numbers, the individuals who are carrying out audits, if you look at the number of people certified to do audits and the number of audits done, it's only one audit every couple of years. It's not a big business. And if you look at the companies that are specialized in audits, you're only looking at a small number of audits a year. So what this means is that because it's not a big market or a big business, it means that there's no incentive for the auditors to develop their skills or develop the market or expand their services in any way. So this is one of the things that led us to the idea that, listen guys, just tweaking the existing system and improving it here and there is not going to help us achieve net zero in 2050. We need a new approach. And this is why we coined the term, the Manifesto for Massive Change, which is a term used by a Canadian designer called Bruce Mao. And again, it corresponds to a situation where change needs to happen, but it's not going to be achieved incrementally. You really need to go back to the drawing board and rethink what you're doing and how you're doing it if you want to have a big impact down the line. So one of the phrases that came up, a memorable phrase that came up in a meeting of contractors, and it was a phrase used by Clemens Roth, head of energy efficiency in one of the Fraunhofer Institutes. He spoke of the need to change the narrative. And it meant talking about the bigger picture, because SMEs not only need to improve their energy efficiency, they also need to switch to renewable energies, as has been said already this afternoon. They also need to capture carbon and reduce their carbon footprint. And they also need to work on biodiversity, which is something that's a little bit related. So the point is that energy efficiency is not the only thing that SMEs have to do. It's not the only thing that companies in general have to do. And this is the bigger picture. The bigger picture is about climate change, and it's about reaching net zero in 2050. So this was really the start of the new narrative that we tried to develop. And in our meeting, the so-called midterm meeting, we looked at a number of things. We looked at a lot of the reasons why the system isn't working well enough to achieve the impact we need in 2050. That was ultimately our point. It's not, are we a bit better than yesteryear? Are we achieving our goals as an organization? That's not the question. The question is, can this system help Europe achieve the goal of net zero in 2050? And the answer was no. We're going to have to change things. And of course, if you say that you don't have a solution, all you're going to do is annoy everybody in the room, because you're telling them they're not doing a good job and you're not telling them how they can do better. So really, this was an important point for us because we had already begun to see how things could be better. And that was why we thought it was worthwhile to talk about massive change, because already emerging was the idea of what this change could look like. And one of the, so my slides are a little bit wordy, so I'm going to talk over them. You'll have a copy of them, you can come back to me if you want. So what's written on the page and what I'm saying is two different things. Are you confused? Well, I hope so, because that means you can come back and we can talk about it later, okay? So what has emerged since is that the narrative needs to change at two levels. And one is, what do we say to SMEs? And so telling SMEs that you need to improve your energy efficiency, again, is true. But it's probably not the only thing they need to do to achieve net zero. And maybe it's not the easiest place for them to start on the journey to net zero. So what's the new narrative? We can talk about the climate. And at the time, I was in meetings with the International Energy Agency, looking at their world overview of energy, etc., that they publish every year. And they were insisting that it's not enough. Of course, energy efficiency is important, but you have to change to renewables. You have to do energy efficiency in the broad sense of the term, not just the term in which it is used for the European Energy Directive, which is a narrow sense of energy efficiency. And also you need to capture carbon. And all of those provide different sets, opportunities to act. The timing is different, what you can do, the co-benefits that you can achieve from these are all different. And for most companies, they will all have different places where it's easy to start. So the point is, how do we open this conversation with SMEs so that they find a place to start now and not have to wait? Because if you start talking about too narrow a topic that is not relevant, they'll just say, yeah, we agree, it's important, but what can we do? You know, come back to us when you have good ideas on that one. So what we did find was that there are actually, we looked at barriers, et cetera, we'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but we also found things that work. And where we found things that work was a group of carbon auditors operating in Belgium who are having terrific success working with SMEs. So this really, you know, we can look at all the bad news, why things don't work, but that only gives you excuses to do nothing. So we decided, let's see what we can learn from what does work and try to build out from that. And it was really interesting. We brought some of those carbon auditors with us to the midterm meeting in November, and they helped us, you know, fashion an idea of what really needs to happen. And part of the new initiative, you know, there was the new conversation to have with SMEs. It's about climate change, it's about the big issue, and it's really about finding where's a good place to start. Not just focusing on energy efficiency, but it could be carbon, it could be renewables, but where is a good place to start? And these carbon auditors gave us wonderful examples of how, in working with companies, they found fantastic places to start that involved low cost, no cost initiatives that in 2 years gave, for example, a cement company a 20% reduction in carbon footprint at no cost, just through changes in behavior. And now this company has gone further, and it's working on energy efficiency, it's working on the shift to renewables, it's working on its suppliers, etc. It has really become a champion for net zero in the companies that it works with, both its suppliers and the clients that it is a provider for. So this gave us confidence that there are new ways of doing things, there are other ways of doing things, in which energy efficiency fits naturally. But by looking at this bigger picture, it should be possible to achieve much higher benefits. And one of the concepts that emerged out of this is the role of the auditor as the initiator or the activator. So in the old picture, as an energy efficiency auditor, you work with a company and you want them to implement their energy efficiency recommendations. Well, the emerging picture is of an auditor that plays a broader role of the activator, that is helping the company, first of all, decide where to start on its journey to net zero. It gets them going and shows them what they can do now without waiting and starts them on that journey, knowing that later on, when the timing is right, they'll have to implement energy efficiency measures. And also knowing that many of those measures are probably collective measures. So when you work with a giant company, there are lots of things it can do on its own by working with plant and machinery, etc. But when you're looking with smaller companies, most of the things that will help them are going to be collective initiatives. And this is a really important theme now. So the question is, how many auditors, you know, are able to advise small companies to say, listen, the best thing you can do is join a renewable energy cooperative or an energy community, or a district heating and cooling initiative, or a local mobility initiative where you're charging electric bikes and stuff like that. These are the kind of recommendations that really activate or initiate, especially the small actors, put them on the road to net zero. But it's very far away from the kind of recommendations that the typical energy efficiency auditor would seek to provide. So this means that the job of the auditor, if the job of the auditor were to change or extend a little bit, it could have a much bigger impact. And so to imagine the full scope of what auditors might do, building upon and out and around their key competence of being an energy auditor, and also solving the problem of the fact that energy auditing is a lousy business by giving them new business opportunities. So to imagine this new market of services that could be provided by auditors, it's good to have a look at, realistically, what's going to drive change at the level of the SME. And so these are some of the ideas that we came up with. And we recognize that the carbon auditors that we were talking to, that were having this success, working one-on-one with SMEs, that these guys were really working with innovative SMEs that saw climate change as an opportunity to transform their business or reinvent their business and basically become a different business, more competitive, more interesting to their consumers, etc., and also much more satisfying and edifying for their employees. And all of these co-benefits, they really see them. They see the difference in the relations with employees and with their consumers, etc., and even with the community in which they are embedded. So, but this is the innovative companies, and that's only a small percentage of all the companies. So what else is going to drive change? Well, one is the supply chain dynamic. Basically, you have big companies have publicly announced that they want to achieve net zero by such and such a year. So say 2030, 2040, 2035, we want to be net zero or net negative. This is what the big companies are saying. But if you look in detail at these companies, they have sometimes hundreds of thousands of suppliers, and 80% of their carbon footprint is with the suppliers. So unless they bring the suppliers along, they can only make a 20% reduction in their carbon footprint. And this is real. These are not invented numbers. This is the reality. So the point is, that the big companies that have made pledges publicly, that are under pressure from their shareholders, that are under pressure from their employees. Note that Microsoft did nothing about this until a few years ago. And the same with Google, etc. The employees across the world did sit-downs and walkouts and refused to work until the company capitulated and started to measure its carbon footprint. And now they are champions, of reducing their carbon footprint. But it was the employees that forced them to do it. So there are lots of drivers, and the supply chain dynamic is certainly one of them. And another really important one is the urban renewal or the urban development dynamic. There's an organization in Europe called the Covenant of Mayors. 10,000 municipalities, more than 10,000 municipalities in Europe have signed a pledge that they want their municipality or city to be carbon zero by a certain date. And that means that the citizens have to reduce their carbon footprint, the big companies, public administration, and the SMEs have to reduce their carbon footprint. They've gone public, the cities, they said, we want to do this by such a date. So we're working with some of those, in Belgium. Leuven has a project called Leuven 2030. The mayor of Leuven has announced that he wants Leuven to be carbon neutral by 2030. How the hell is he going to do that if he doesn't bring the SMEs along? So here we have the whole development dynamic of the city wants to achieve, say, carbon neutrality, and so they are leading initiatives intended to reduce the carbon footprint of, among other groups, also the SMEs. Now I'll come back to this again because it's much easier than it looks. It's much more difficult than it looks. And you have industrial policy. Now some region, recently I was at a meeting in Wels, in Upper Austria, the World Sustainable Energy Days, and Upper Austria was, talking about its strategy. They want to be carbon negative by 2045, I think. They want to, they have all kinds of interesting initiatives. But the meeting was about energy efficiency. So say sustainable energy, and a big chunk of it was about energy efficiency. And all they talked about was carbon, So this is an example of how the narrative is changing. And from the government perspective, they want the whole carbon footprint of the region to come down because it makes the region more competitive, easier to attract investment, easier to attract new companies, easier to attract young people who want to work in an environment which is good to the planet. So this is linked with the urban policy, and it's part of the discussion that we have going on with Leuven and Brussels. It's all about the bigger industrial policy agenda, the decarbonization of the sectors. and also industrial policy and cluster policy for SMEs. And finally, another big driver, which is easier to underestimate, is finance, because now a huge amount of money has been made available to the banks to lend out or to invest in carbon projects, energy projects, climate projects, etc. But most of the projects are really small. They're 50,000 euros, 100,000 euros. And right now, the banks are really only able to lend out 1 million, 5 million, etc. It's very hard for them to finance a project that costs 50,000 euros. But they need to do that, because otherwise they're not going to spend all of this money. They're not going to make the profits from lending and everything else. So the finance industry really needs to make this happen. And luckily, there's been a lot of innovation in the finance sector with really interesting things coming out. Not only, off-balance sheet instruments, all kinds of financial engineering tricks. And all of these systems, they all rely on energy savings. And all of that is work for the auditors, because unless you have the energy efficiency auditors involved, you cannot estimate the savings, and you cannot develop the financial engineering to make the project happen. So that's just to let you know that there's a whole bunch of actors out there who ultimately need the services of the energy auditors. And so put together, this is a much bigger and more interesting market than the limited market of the audits to satisfy the European Energy Directive. So this was the kind of thing that we were looking to develop. And the general idea was, well, why don't we, was the realization, first of all, that who employs the energy auditor is not just a company getting audited, but it could be financial institutions that have to make a pipeline of energy and climate projects. It could be the cities that want to decarbonize a district, like a commercial district or a restaurant district or a business park. Or it could be a big company that wants to decarbonize its suppliers. In the case of big companies like Unilever and Danone, they say that 60% of their carbon footprint is with the farmers. And that's way down, many tiers in the supply chain, 60%. So unless they can decarbonize farming, they can only achieve a 40% reduction in their carbon footprint. Who's going to audit the farmers, etc., in terms of their carbon footprint, or in terms of the energy efficiency services that they need to do that? But let's come back and have a look again at the cities, because what we found is that many cities have started with big ambitions. They've had money, they've implemented pilot projects, and now they're stuck because they don't know how to work with SMEs, and they don't know how to work with auditors. They have lists of auditors, and they ring them up, and they have meetings with them, etc., but they don't know how to work with them. Because they need more than just the audit. They need a model for engaging with the SMEs, and they need the auditor to do more than just go through the checklist, provide the report, and carry out the auditor. They need other forms of support that the auditor could easily provide, and which would expand greatly the market for its services. And again, just looking at the companies here, they've only just started to look at their supply chains. For the moment, lots of big companies have been looking at their own internal, consumption of energy and the things they do internally, and they're only now looking at the supply chains. But if you extend, the logic that a company typically 20% of its carbon footprint is internal, it can manage it on its own, and 80% is outside. If you extend that, you go down to tier 1, in other words, the companies, suppliers you have contracts with. Again, it's only 20% of the 80% that they can actually control, which is 16%. So when you go to tier 1 in your supply chain, then all you can do is reduce your carbon footprint by 36%. And going 6 tiers down, assuming those numbers hold, etc., those average numbers, 6 tiers down, you still haven't got to 80% of the carbon footprint. Now, big companies haven't even started to figure this out. Most of them are focusing on a few big-ticket items, like bottles. The glass bottles they use for the drinks, or the aluminum cans, or the concrete that goes into construction. They're looking at those, which are really important problems. but they haven't yet got to grips with the complexity of the problem of dealing with their whole supply chain, because there's a lot in that supply chain that's chopped up in little bits that lies with SMEs, etc. And until they address the SME problem within their supply chains, they are not going to reach their ambition of net zero. So we've been, so this issue of, how do you engage with SMEs on a large scale, 100 at a time or 1,000 at a time? This is an important question. And ultimately, so to get to grips with this, we looked at, a little bit at the breakdown of SMEs in the Brussels region. And this diagram here on the top right-hand corner, the graph, it shows that the majority are zero employees. These are these are micro enterprises, they're independents. Maybe they work in media, they're consultants, they're accountants, hairdressers, coffee shops, small shops, etc. All of these live in buildings, they all have transport, they all consume energy, etc. They all have to reduce their carbon footprint. But dealing with a small company with zero employees requires a certain approach. You're essentially dealing with citizens and family businesses where there's a fuzzy line between the business and the family, etc. And then as you go through the population of SMEs, you have those with 4 employees, etc., etc. And you really need to be much more nuanced and sophisticated in terms of how you actually address those. So in terms of the engagement model, it's good to know about the adoption curve. In other words, if you send a message out to 1,000 companies about some new innovative ideas, maybe 2.5%, max 25% will reply and show interest. This is what has happened with the cities. The cities, that they got tool heads, guys that come with a recipe for a method, they want to do hackathons or whatever. They come along, the message goes out, hardly anybody shows up, and they're totally discouraged. But what they have to understand is, no, this is the normal dynamic of change. This is the adoption curve. And if you get 25 replying out of 1,000, you're doing okay. You just need to be much more patient in your approach and know that it will take several years, to build up and get the traction you require. And then here on the bottom right-hand corner, we're referring to the fact that, small companies in particular, they don't always own the building they're in. They don't always have control over many of the services that they enjoy, so they cannot decarbonize them easily. They need to take part in collective projects. And so they need to wait until the time is right. So can you act now? Can you act on your own? Can you act collectively? Do you have to do it later? These are the kind of questions, again, which help you to segment the SME population. So anyway, we're nearly there. In terms of the emerging, vision as to, what is this, how are we going to deal with this SME problem? The first thing, if you look at the middle thing, the first thing is to know that the SMEs, you can look at them in different ways. You can look at them from an innovation perspective, a supply chain perspective. You can look at them from a geographical perspective in terms of the districts they occupy in a city, etc. These are all different approaches where you have natural leaders for initiatives involving SMEs, involving energy efficiency, carbon reduction, etc. So these are all of the different buyers of auditor services, ultimately. And on the far right there, what we're saying is that a solution requires not only auditors. You need all kinds, there are lots of auditors out there, not just energy efficiency auditors. You have the Sustainable Development Goals, CSR, ESG, CDP. There are many, many different protocols which are closely related because they all have to do with climate and energy and being good to the planet. But all of these live in silos in a highly fragmented market, and they're not working together the way they should. So ultimately, what this slide lays out is how the role of the auditor could be expanded beyond that of the auditor to become an initiator, an activator, and the list of some of the skills that would help them fulfill those goals. So this is the concept of the alliance that we've been developing ultimately. It's some kind of an initiative that brings together auditors of different kinds, service providers, with those that need their skills, that would employ them. And the idea is to better define the complementary skills that auditors could learn that would complete what they do as auditors and help them become initiators and activators and operate on a whole other scale. So just final remark really is one message to the Commission in many ways. You know, we've had a look at the barriers many times, but let's not forget what works. There are other questions we can ask, and actually there are many things that work. The other thing is, do SMEs really need training? I mean, they do need services. That's what they want. I would say that the focus for training really should be auditors, because not all auditors will become initiators or activators, but those that do, with the right kind of training, they can have a huge impact on their environment. And the final thing is, you know, what about collective actions? And you can ask yourself, you know, if the easiest route to zero carbon or whatever for an SME is through collective action, how many auditors are already able to recommend participation in collective actions and guide large groups of SMEs into that kind of an initiative? Because this is where the big impact is going to happen. So anyway, I'll leave it there. I think there's a last slide with my email address. And we're continuing on with this work because we're working with, say, with Leuven and the City of Brussels and with some sectoral associations in the Brussels area, following on this logic and trying to define what are the new skills that they require of auditors to help them achieve their climate and energy goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. We have really appreciated your contribution. And now we move on to the next speaker. He is Sergio Bottiglioni, an expert in the field of energy efficiency, who will describe the Innoveas project and what we take away from it. Please, Sergio.
Good afternoon. I'm Sergio Bottiglioni and I support for the Innoveas project the coordinator on technical and scientific aspects. We know how complex is the global energy scenarios in this specific period and how it is in continuous evolution. The energy cost for many SMEs is now a matter of a problem, is a major problem. And we have to say that this aspect was less relevant when we started the project by means of interviews, questionnaires to key actors of SMEs companies. We heard that normally the energy cost is something that is minimal if compared to materials, to personal costs. But today the situation has changed before the pandemic economic crisis, and then now the war in Ukraine has changed the scenario. When energy cost increases, we should be happy because our business plans for energy efficiency are working better in terms of economic results if we calculate the payback time and net present value of energy efficiency measures. But this is something that we can't say too much. Of course, it's a problem. The energy cost is again a matter of attention for the SMEs. My feeling is that to face these problems, there's a big risk that is to give less importance to climate change fight. Here in Italy, for example, we have heard some politicians talking about the idea of reopening coal-fired power plants. We are also discussing to increase the extraction of natural gas in the Mediterranean area and in the Mediterranean Sea, and also to put a lot of money to increase the pipes from which we drive natural gas from countries different than Russia. So this is a risk. I think, especially in this historical period, we have to stress and to say again that to face energy cost and the dependence of EU countries on imported fossil fuels, the real need is to push energy efficiency, is to try to move to renewables. It's really time for the SMEs to be actors of the energy transition, to change their production paradigm, being part of a new business model able to produce social value and limited environmental impact, and of course, make profit from this. So the scenario is quite complicated and in continual evolution, but the energy efficient way is what we have to do. We have heard from Patrick before that the situation, the evidence tell us that not enough SMEs have started an energy transition process, even if, of course, we have the know-how, we have the technologies, we have rules that says us how to perform the energy audits, and also we have a different kind of public financial support. Why energy audits that are, of course, the necessary starting point for this energy transition are not widely applied? What limits entrepreneurs to adopt energy efficiency measures? So this is the main goal of Innoveas project, is to try to give answers to those questions and to suggest solutions. So the project deeply investigates the state of the art about the SMEs and finds up strategies to motivate and assist and to push SMEs in energy transition. Project aim is thus to define a capacity building program directly tested with a high number and developed with the help of a high number of SMEs and other stakeholders, and end up with a structured, permanent, and expandable solutions. Here you can see the consortium. The project is an initiative promoted by 10 partners located in Italy, Spain, Slovenia, Belgium, Germany, Poland. The consortium covers different knowledge areas, and this, I think, is very important, this kind of approach, together with a technical point of view. We have experts on economics, sociologists, experts in training and communication. The project is focusing to specific industrial sectors, construction, food processing, and chemical industry. Each sector is considered by each country involved with taking into account the specificity of the country. And of course, there's for example, here in Italy, we worked with the construction companies, and there's a big difference between the construction sector and the other two I mentioned before, because the working space of a construction company is the construction field. So they can be positive actors doing their effort, especially in set up and install materials and promote technologies and so on. They have less consumes in their facilities. Of course, they have the machinery and stuff like that. Okay, about the barriers. The first step of the project has been a deep analysis of the barriers, especially, let's say, the non-technical ones with the help of sociologists. What is limiting the adoption of energy audits and implementation of energy efficiency measures? So we can just say very quick, because we will come back again to this subject, and understand the barriers is very important to focus on what we have to do. We can say energy culture, lack of information, lack of time, poor sensitivity to environmental issues. We have also let's say economic issues. The energy cost is, as I said before, in some cases minimal. There are fear of hidden costs, and also once the audit has been performed and they have ideas, the follow-up, as we heard before, with the energy efficiency measures is something very difficult. They need help. They need to be supported in this action. One interesting thing is that we can't really say there's a major problem or a major barriers, but we assist to a sort of what we call an accumulation factor. So different little things that together act to block this development. Barriers are really related to people, to their behavior, to their working procedures. Of course, if we just think energy audits produces innovation and require to rethink working procedures. Key persons of an enterprise are focusing normally on their personal goals, and they are mainly focusing to their role, to what they have to do. And they are not so, it's not so easy for them to change their habits, their working habits, and let's stay also attend to their, I would call their comfort zone. So this transition needs to to change and make innovation and change the normal practices. So the question of Innoveas is, now we know the barriers, we know they are most related to human beings, so we know the new narrative has to be supported. We have to open the mind even of the SMEs, but even of the auditors, as we said, just to suggest a new scenario in which act. So how to overcome the barriers? So the project has identified, let's say, the framework conditions and specifically what elements can help SMEs, like, for example, incentives, the possibility to get voluntary certification like the ISO 50001, for example, EMAS, and so on. What are the things that helps and facilitate those processes? To push the different SMEs, key actors, to promote a real energy transition, we need, of course, to fix common objectives that are above their single ones, and it's so a matter of create alliances, we said before, to find a new speech, a manifesto, and to have common, mainly, objectives. So Innoveas suggests a capacity building program, which is a set of different actions that I can quickly summarize. We have web-based modules, videos that you can find here in the web page. You can see written here. There are videos in different languages of the participants of the project that shows the possibility and the advantages to perform an energy transition, and suggests also specific cases of some virtuous experiences. We performed a training for groups of companies in what we call the In-Situ Training. It's an innovative way of training in which the participants are engaged, are more protagonist than passive subject of this kind of training. We made also a training inside the companies to look in with experts and to try to focus on different aspects to different aspects, and what are the steps to do to start this process. We made transdisciplinary seminars, and we trained also trainers, a person that usually train other person on energy about this new narrative and the needs of this changement. So we have at the end defined let's say a business model to continue the action, and set up a business alliance for climate and sustainable energy, which is something that has to bring together the demand and the offer, the expertise, the needs, and so on to go together, because this is a journey we have to do together, as we said. when we said we have to introduce a new narrative, we have to change the paradigm and suggest a new business model. How to convince SMEs to start their energy transition? I think the narrative has two strengths. The first deals with the promotion of the concept of social responsibility, which is a big step we heard also before from other person speaking before me. And the second one is the need of rethinking deeply what we intend with economic benefit. About the social responsibility, we have to say that representative of an SME must be aware that they can be positive actors of the decarbonizing process and can add value in climate change fight. Everyone can be actor in this process. It's a question of responsibility for us and the future generation, let's say our children's. What kind of world they will inherit from us? This requires before, as starting point, a cultural change. Business must contribute to create value. We need to pursue an economic model based more on contribution than on extraction. When we talk extraction, we think the extraction of not renewable resources, but also some economic model that extract, let's say, human relationships and quality of the work. So we have to change this idea. The first point of social responsibility, I think, unfortunately, is not enough to push and the SMEs. Sociologists say us that when someone has to face the complexity, like the one we have in front of us, people look for shortcuts and they tend to individualism. So this is something that needs to overcome the individualism and to look for the planet and all the people living in the planet. Anyway, I don't want to give up with this possibility to convince people that they can act for the common good. I think it's something we have and we must stress. And this can be an important driver for also for the companies, as we heard before. People working in the company ask their company to start something new. The second point is more probably convincing. It means to rethink economic benefits, and this has to do with the concept of externalities. When we talk about economic benefit in about energy performances, we usually think in a conventional way that the economic benefit comes from the reduction of the energy expenses on the bills, no? And this, is, of course, is a part of the question, but I think it's a little part, and not sufficient part, and as we have heard, is really something that is not enough to make this changement. So we have to think about the concept of externalities. Every time we have to rethink costs and benefits, so including what we call the hidden costs. When someone consumes a fossil fuel, of course, they incur, as we said, indirect costs, the bills, but also the collectivity support indirect costs. And this is this kind of impact on the collectivity is related to the negative externalities coming from energy consumption. Not only the climate change, which we know is a global problem, but we can also talk about local effects, like the pollution, like the loss of biodiversity, like of the problems related to human health, all a set of externalities that we can measure. We have many projects that have measured those kind of externalities and give to them also an economic in euro value. And so the reverse of the medal is that every time we act to reduce energy consumption, we are thus So we are make a reduction of the externalities, negative externalities. So we are giving back to the community a value, and I think this is the key of this new narrative also on economic value, because this has a high potential economic value. The idea is to find innovative ways to make profit from the reduction of those negative externalities. An SME, which is investing on energy efficiency, we know is entering in what we call the green economy world, which offers a large set of possibility. And by well communicating their effort, the SMEs can be better connected with this growing demand for green goods and products and services. And so also they can obtain environmental or energy voluntary certification, so they can increase their reputation, their green reputation. And this is a question also of be in the market and with new possibilities. We also heard before that for the SMEs, the need to move and implement energy efficiency measures is a way to survive in the market, to be close to the supply chain of the big companies, which is still running on this, and they have the need to be linked to the supply chain, and also to access green public procurement. For example, the building companies in Italy, if they are certificated according to ISO 50001, they get more points when they apply for a call for tender for a construction of public, something like that. So this is a way to make profit. I come to my conclusions. Saving energy is to take care of the planet, of course, but it is also a positive way to be in the new emerging green market, which is strongly changing and that rewards companies and enterprises that invest on social and environmental responsibility. I want just to conclude with the last word. If the word of the finance, and when I say finance, I think something very different than a charity organization, of course. When I say the finance is looking for, and for companies that are moving to this kind of transition, and they evaluate those companies with the ESG rating, environmental, social, governance indicators, to decide if it is convenient or not to put money on those kind of industries. I think if the finance has this point of view, it's really, we can easily understand how energy transition can be a real economic occasion, also together with the possibility to act for a better world. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Sergio. Thank you very much for your clear presentation and your scenario, new scenario. And now we have a break, after which we will have a round table with other Innoveas partners. So we'll see you all in 10 minutes after the break.
Thank you.
Okay, so good afternoon again, and thank you for being here. Now we have the roundtable moment. So we have on stage all the partners of Innoveas project. We will hear first from Gabriele Quinti from Knowledge and Innovation. He will talk about the barriers that we have found during the initial part of the project. So I leave you the floor. You have the presentation.
Thank you very much, Mara. Good afternoon, everybody. What I will tell you, I will try to report you the results of the first phase of the Innoveas project that was devoted to some research and studies. As Sergio said, these studies perhaps will be were involved in another era, we can say in that way, because it was 3 years ago, and many things changed during these 3 years. But these are were our starting points of Innoveas. We used many sources of information: literature, documentary review, an online survey to SMEs managers, and some in-depth interviews, both to SMEs in Germany, Italy, Poland, Slovenia, Spain, and also in-depth interview to key informant linked with SMEs, such as energy auditor, over consultant, policymaker, representative of financial institution, and representative of enterprise association, and so on. The actors that we consider, in a certain sense, the actor of the system of SMEs when they deal with energy issues. One of the first, I have to be very brief, so I apologize. The first result of our all these studies was and is today, also today, to highlight a wide diversity among SMEs inside the sector of activities, propensity towards innovation, use of technology of energy, energy culture, quality and quantity of human resources, and so on. Wide diversity of SMEs, but also wide diversity of regulatory and financial conditions among the European countries, and wide diversity of barriers met by the different SMEs for the implementation of energy efficiency measures. Another result, the first one was the wide heterogeneity that I just mentioned just now. The second result is a wide difference in the SMEs energy culture. Normally, the big majority of European SMEs appear little interested to the transition toward low-carbon society or to pro-environmental energy culture as abroad. However, there are some SMEs that have a positive orientation on energy efficiency, and because they are working in the green sector, because they are working on environmental sustainability, and so on. Therefore, we can see that there are some innovative and environmentalist SMEs that should be valorized with aim of a stronger involvement of all or most of the SMEs in the energy transition. And finally, in some SMEs, in some small and medium enterprises, there is a role, a positive role that could be played, that is already played by we workers and employees that often promote an energy efficiency practices and insist on the promotion of energy efficiency practices with the management of these SMEs. I mentioned before that there are a lot of barriers. Some barriers were already mentioned by Sergio Bottiglioni before me. I can mention some of them. A strong reluctance towards considering energy issue, also due to a lack of sensitivity to environmental issues, probably is very important. Lack of trust in the future, lack of trust in the market, lack of trust in other interlocutors, in the announced future benefits. For instance, Sergio mentioned before the importance of being aware of future benefits, but the problem is that very often there is no trust towards the future and toward a possible improvement in the future. Lack of internal resources, both quantity of human resources, but also the quality of human resources, therefore appropriate skills. difficulty in using external resources, human resources that can help SMEs, also because there is no money for doing this. Difficulty in planning the medium and long term, and perhaps more broadly, a malfunction in decision-making process, also due to the plurality of interests, sometimes divergence and point of view. Lack of funds, but now is more important than perhaps than 3 years ago, and the costs. Fear of facing unnecessary costs and the so-called hidden costs. Organizational deficiencies, not only the difficulties in decision-making that I mentioned before, but also in the organization of the work inside many SMEs. Lack of inadequacy of technical resources, lack of time, over priorities, some regulatory rules and legislative rules that sometimes don't work, and worries in disclosing data are or stopping slowing activity during an energy audit. These are only some among the many barriers that we identified in our research activity at the beginning of Innovas, and I think that most of these barriers, perhaps all these barriers, are also valid today. Some recommendation. The need for a customized and flexible approach, taking into account the wide variety of SMEs, it is necessary, in a certain sense, to tailor the approach, to have a targeted approach, considering that the SMEs are very different. We should be flexible, and we should be flexible in general, and we should be flexible in implementing energy efficiency measures, and also in proposing energy audit or other equivalent measures that can also be considered, other kinds of audits, simplified approaches, because for some SMEs perhaps an audit is not needed, but perhaps a simplified approach could be adopted. The need of an enabling environment, as I mentioned before, we have to consider SMEs manager, SMEs employees, but we have also to consider a lot of other actors that play a role with SMEs, financial sector, policymaker, enterprises association, energy auditors and other consultants, etc., etc. Therefore, we need a sort of ecosystem of these actors constitute a sort of ecosystem, and we need to coordinate their activity to create a sort of enabling environment for SMEs aimed at their insertion in the general trend of energy transition. And we need also an integrated approach, among the actors, an integrated approach to determine the interests of all concerned parties, an integrated approach for negotiating between different perspectives. Otherwise, if we don't adopt this integrated approach, obstacle cannot be removed. And last but not least, I think that there is apart SMEs, another important actor among the ones that I mentioned are consultants, energy auditors, and also other consultants that should be considered as enabler for the implementation of energy audits, enabler for the adoption, design and adoption and implementation of energy efficiency measures. And also, again, we need to tailor, we need to target. Therefore, we have to consider that there are a lot of schemes of audits. Some schemes are adapted for a certain type of SMEs. Some other schemes could be adopted for other types of SMEs. Therefore, we need a personalization of what we have to do with each SMEs. And we have also to consider that the audit is just if the audit is necessary, because there are a lot of SMEs that adopted energy efficiency measures also independently from the implementation of an audit. But if the audit is implemented, the audit should be considered as a first point, a first step. What it is important are the energy efficiency measures that are designed and implemented later. There are a lot of enterprises that implement audits, but then are not able to take into account the results of the audit and not implement energy efficiency measures, and in this case, the audit was completely unuseful. Thanks for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Gabriele, for the report on barriers. And for the explanation on the recommendations developed during the project. So now what we will do is to present the peculiarities of the national cases, and so I'm calling the other partners to present the national situation. The first is Penelope from Spain. So, okay.
Thank you, Mara. Hello, my name is Penelope, and I'm coming from Spain and the Association of Energy Efficiency Companies. And I hope I'm going to talk about our experience in the implementation of the project. As you can see, the energy consumption of the industry energy consumption stands for 24% of the total final energy consumption. If we separate it in different industry sectors, you can see that the three sectors we were working with in the project, food, chemicals, and construction, are quite relevant and can have a considerable energy saving potential. Meanwhile, the reality of SMEs in Spain is a bit different. The percentage of SMEs in Spain is much higher than the average of European SMEs. Mainly, they are micro SMEs. So before the COVID situation, already Spanish SMEs had a significant structural weaknesses, not just because of the size of their business, but also the productivity was low, there was a limited export capacity, low investment in innovation, low digitalization, and low capacity to generate stable employment. And I wanted to add as well from our experience in A3E that it's not a weakness itself from the SMEs, but it's more kind of a political weakness or barrier that we have problems and delays in transposing directives and competence between regions and the central government, and the complexity of bureaucracy is a problem as well, and it's a barrier added to implement energy efficiency measures and energy audits, and become more difficult barriers for the Spanish SMEs. And what about what happened when the COVID crisis came? The industry was the second hardest hit by the COVID economic crisis. However, by the end of 2021, sectors such as construction and agriculture were beginning to recover. And what about the chemical industry? It was a kind of very different situation because they were so active and busy with all the sanitary products and disinfectants that was completely different situation for them. And we can see that as well in the participation numbers. Here you can see the 6 editions we had in the In-Situ trainings in Spain. We were quite happy with the first one, that our goal was 15 people per edition. So we got the 16 people and we said, okay, we can close the group because we have a quite happy number. We thought was going to be easier, but then in the second and the subsequent editions, was more difficult than we thought. And as you can see, May and November had the lowest numbers in participation, and they are both from the chemical sector. So we can understand that maybe it wasn't the best moment for them, the 2021, because we think that the situation they had was kind of exceptional and was not the best moment for them. For the training, the priority wasn't the energy consumption, as I understand. but not was everything was bad from the chemical sector. We had like good companies, motivated companies. Like you can see here is an SME that was participating in the videos, and they got the best successful numbers for the views. As you can see, more than 1,600 views from this video. That is a case study. So this motivated company was participating in the videos, but also in the trainings as a speaker, telling their experience. And also they were so motivated that they also participated in the as attendant in the trainings. So they wanted to learn much more and improve their activity. So when I want to highlight the importance of motivating SMEs. If we can get to motivate SMEs, we can get a higher, make a bit higher impact. And also I wanted to highlight the importance of intermediate organizations like industry associations, that they can become allies for us, and they can help to reach out many more companies. And also, from our experience in A3E, that after the trainings, they wanted more. They wanted to learn more, and they contact us, and we are doing some trainings specifically for them, for their needs. And we are sure that after the project ends, we will be still working with them with a lot of different organizations that we made during the project, our network. And what happened after the COVID crisis? When the SMEs were starting to recover from the COVID situation, then the energy price went up, as some speakers were telling us, and is starting to affecting the SMEs as well, obviously. The CEPIME is an organization that works for SMEs in Spain. They made a study recently, last month, and they say that for 71% of SMEs, high prices have an impact on the cost of supplies, and 15% fear for the survival of their businesses. So they are already feeling it, and the SMEs. So yeah, maybe the energy efficiency is important in this moment, but I hope they can survive to be able to make these different changes in their companies. I want to end the presentation with some challenge, actions, and opportunities for the SMEs in Spain. This comes from a document made by the government of Spain, a strategic framework in SME policy 2030. And they speak about challenges that they are very similar to the barriers we've been talking about. Related with sustainability, they say that SMEs need to adopt a business mentality oriented towards a green economy, financial barriers, lack of support from public administrations, and lack of effective legislation, lack of information, administrative burden. So it's very similar to what we've been talking about. It's interesting that it comes from the own government. And what about the action? What are they thinking about doing with the SMEs related with sustainability? Promote environmental information, communication, and dissemination, advancing simplification and application of the environmental regulation, and facilitate the transformation towards a circular economy and the transition to a low-carbon economy. And related with this, the last line of action includes more concrete action related with calculation of the carbon footprint. The carbon footprint was the most popular topic, and one of in the trainings, in our Innoveas trainings, and was one of the wanted to explore in depth in the trainings, even if they already had two different trainings related with this. One was more theoretical and the other more practical, trying to calculate their own carbon footprint, but they wanted to know more about it. That is very interesting. In Spain, we have a voluntary carbon footprint register for companies by the government, but also with the recent climate change law, many companies will have to do it compulsory. That means that if big companies will have to calculate their own carbon footprint and do some action plans, and that related to what we've been talking about with supply chain. That means that if the big companies have to do this analysis, the SMEs will have to do it as well to be able to be in this supply chain. And just to end, that obviously this is going to be an opportunity for SMEs. Most of the big companies are already select their suppliers according to sustainability and environmental criteria. A recent report from CEPIME that I mentioned before points out that 64% of Spanish consumers always take environmental criteria into account when making their purchases. However, more than 78% of SMEs are not aware of key documents such as Government's Agenda 2030, so they have to be aware about all these issues and the opportunities that they are open to them if they are willing to change the way they work. And they will have these opportunities open to them, like new market niches, cost savings, sustainable supply chains, by increased chances of buying public contracts, boost brand image, easier access to finance, better prepare for the future. So obviously there are a lot of things to do, but SMEs as well have to be motivated, as I said, to be able to be changing the way they work. So thank you very much. Keep going.
Thank you, Penelope, for explaining what was going on with the Innoveas activities in Spain. So I forgot to say that if from home someone would like to do questions or suggestions, comments, they have the chat, and we will then read and reply answers in the following days. And now I call another partner. I am going in alphabetical order. So Jure, you can come here from Slovenia. Here is the presentation. You go.
Thank you very much, Mara. Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. My name is Jure Eržen. I work at the local energy agency of Gorenjska. We mainly work with public authorities and authorities. So we were really happy to address SMEs 3 years ago, and we are also happy to be here today and to present our findings and what we did and what we learned during the Innoveas project. So this is a graph I wanted to show you. I mean, we've talked about it previously in previous lectures, but this is a really important issue, and it never hurts if we see it once again. This one is a bit different. It shows how much the energy consumption has risen from 1800s, and especially from the Industrial Revolution. We wouldn't be here if this graph was a lot less steeper, but we see that this graph, or energy consumption in general, is rising rapidly, and we have to do something about it. And that is why we are here today, and that is why we're talking about it. We also see that here that the non-renewable energy sources are the main energy that is being used currently in the world. So again, we need to do something in that. So during the Innoveas project, we tried to do that by addressing the SMEs, and we all know that it is well-established fact that buildings are responsible for more than 40% of energy consumption. But what about the industry? And what is the answer? For us, the industry sector in Slovenia consumes at least 25% of the total energy, and up to 40%. We've come up to these numbers by doing local energy concepts for municipalities, lots of different of them, and we see that this energy consumption is quite large. I mean, quite comparable to also traffic and also residential sector. So, and when we have a big consumption of energy, we also have big possibility for reducing energy consumption. So, what is the role of SMEs in Slovenia? Like similar than in Spain, vast majority of the SMEs in Slovenia are small and medium enterprises. We have approximately 200,000 companies, which is a lot for Slovenia. If I remind you, we have the population of about a little bit more than 2 million, so every 10 person pretty much has a company. And majority of these companies are micro SMEs, so small number of people working in the companies. Those companies are not responsible. I mean, they consume energy, but they are not the biggest consumption of the energy. So we have to address companies that are bigger, let's say, up from 4 or more people. We see that, we have to address those companies and that we have to do something. I mean, we have 200,000 companies and, none of them is thinking a lot about energy. I mean, not many of those companies is thinking of energy. So there is a great potential for doing something. In Innoveas project, we targeted 3 sectors: chemistry, construction, and food sector. And this graph shows you what are the percentages of the companies in these sectors. We see that we addressed a little bit more than 12% of the companies, and that we have to expand our horizon. We have to also address other companies as well. During our efforts in the Innoveas project, we addressed more than 6,000 entities and SMEs, and we carried 2 editions of In-Situ trainings. This means we prepared lectures for or trainings for the companies. And in the first session, I have to say that we were quite discouraged by the numbers because we addressed more than 1,000 companies. We addressed them ourselves, and the result was really not that encouraging. We had participants of 17 participants, and that is really a low number. This is not a target number that we wanted to reach. So in the second, so there are many reasons why the success was not there. One of them is slow adaptation curve, like Patrick said before. Also, we are not that familiar on the market as well. So that is why we, in the second edition, we contacted SMEs through business associations and chambers of commerce. And the adaptation, or we reached even more companies, but also the percentages rise. So we had a lot better attendance in our second edition. In total, we reached 84 participants coming from 35 SMEs. And this is, I mean, quite a good success, I think, for first 2 editions. If we were to do more, I think the results would be even better. But what I want to stress is that when we addressed and when we started doing in-company trainings, so these are the trainings we did in companies. So that means that we visited companies and we talked with them. The trainings were tailored to their needs. And we did some sort of quick energy audit with them, talked about what they can do. The results were much better. And also the SMEs were much more willing to participate. So we were quite happy with that. In total, we reached 7 companies and we had 15 participants. So yeah, that was a good result. And also, what is more important, we developed a plan with the SMEs on how to act. So to our surprise, the SMEs were not, a couple of them were quite good energy-wise, but the other part was quite bad. They were really energy not efficient, and also money-wise, they were spending a lot more than they should for their energy bills. So they were quite happy with us as well, and we kind of, I think we got them on the road to doing something and to doing more and more measures later on during their lifetime. So yeah, that is, I think, really important. And now we're talking about energy crisis, and yeah, we people are quite, I would say, forgetful, and we don't think about the problems till we get a kick in the back, in the ass, I would say. And this is true also with energy, as we see now. So 2 years ago, not many people were thinking about energy, and now everybody's talking about it. And why is that? Because, yeah, prices are going up. So, and with that, more and more SMEs are facing problems with their energy costs. So we have to take advantage of this now and reach as many SMEs and help as many SMEs as possible and help them out as much as we can, because after this will be, I mean, hopefully better someday, hopefully very soon, but they will then also forget about this kind of measures. So we need to act and help them out now. Because we need to be aware, because if we have 200,000 companies, this also has a great impact on population as well. Because if the SMEs are doing bad, then this means that also the population is doing bad. So we need to act on both ends. So what can we do? First steps in the process of improving energy efficiency and use of renewable energy sources. Energy audits, like we addressed them in Innoveas project. They need to be widely available, and we also have to increase adaptation of audits in SMEs. But this is only the first step. We also have to do, because if we do energy audit and nothing happens, we haven't done anything. So we need to do energy efficient measures. We have to also encourage subsidies for energy efficiency measures. But what is most importantly, I think, we need to focus on education. We have to educate both companies, public sector, and also auditors, like we talked before. We're doing our part in addressing public. We're also going to schools, learning students about energy efficiency and stuff like that. And now we've done educations in SMEs. So I'm hopeful that we did a small part in trying to turn the curve of the graph I've showed you on the beginning, and I'm hopeful that, yeah, all together we can do it and get on the road to more efficient and, yeah, nicer future for all of us. And I would also like to say that, or I should end up with that. This was enough, I think. It was a good end, so I'm going to leave you with that. So thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Okay, so after this optimistic message, we can listen to Poland case. So Marek, please.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope, let's say, that I will very quickly brief you about the situation in Poland. We've been encountering during realization of the Innovas project. To whom do not know me, I will present myself. I'm working in a company which is called National Energy Conservation Agency. And we've been partnering the Innovas projects in Poland itself. I've structured the presentation in that manner that it should allow me to present what challenges we have encountered during the implementation of the project and what concrete ideas can be implemented in order to meet these challenges, to use these opportunities which emerged. First of all, in Poland we have quite a large market of energy auditors or suppliers of this kind of services. Nevertheless, related to buildings, or related to big enterprises. There is nothing dedicated in SME scale, and we have identified that this is an issue. There is need for specific, simple service, cheap service, trustworthy service, and etc. So there is need for a lot of companies, small companies who are servicing small SME companies in terms of improving or advising on improving energy efficiency. That is also important because we have identified that SMEs do not usually actively seek for this kind of energy advice. They are not aware that they need it. Once they will know it, they are using it, they are very happy, and they are following the recommendation. Nevertheless, at this very moment, most of them, I can bet, do not know that they want it. So this is a barrier to overcome. And SMEs, at least in Poland, they are very busy people who are trying to survive on the market. So they are interested mostly in quick and easy solutions. They do not want to start the conversation with the auditors about some long-term and complex solutions and long-term perspective. They will, excuse me. Excuse me again. They will start conversation once you are you are going to provide them with quick and easy fix. So, and this is the starting point, which has to be if we want to make long relations with this SSME. And the fourth observations we get that due to the scale, they do not have budget for employing high-quality engineers from the market, and therefore the technical infrastructure they have too often is serviced by personnel who is not very high educated and competent. Therefore, it's somehow working. They are not even are not sure if it is working properly, and the question of increasement of efficiency is far ahead of them. And for sure, they do not have energy managers who are trying to constantly invest their time in improvement of energy efficiency within this company. They have also limited investment capital. So if they have chance to get a loan from bank, most likely they will spend it on production increase, on new products development, etc. Not for the improvement of the technical quality of their enterprises, because it's the kind of long-term strategy, which I said before is not the main core goal they are pursuing. From the auditor's point of view, there is a problem which is which is currently under development, because they have no detailed energy consumption data. Energy consumption data is something basic for an energy auditor to provide any kind of analysis and identifications where the problem lies. They have mostly invoices, so monthly bills, monthly amounts. It's a very limited part of energy advice you can provide when you have such few data to analyze. If you have more data, you are able to provide more information. Nevertheless, at the moment, from 5 or 10 years, the IT solutions is becoming cheaper. The measurement equipment is becoming cheaper, more available. It is feasible to implement also in SME scale, and we have this European directive, which implement at least dense data on the selling the measured devices. So it will be, I believe strongly, it will be much easier in following years to energy audit the smaller companies. But once we got to inside the SME, we have identified really impressive potential for improving energy efficiency and willingness to do so. The important thing to underline is that the bigger potential is in the larger SMEs, not this one-person micro companies, but rather with those which are almost reaching the limits of the not being SME. Nevertheless, general attitude of the management is really in line with EU policy, at least in Poland, mostly because of the rising energy costs of the moment, but significant part of them are also part of the supply chain. And this is also becoming important driver which motivates companies, smaller companies, to pursue these climate goals. And I would also say it at the end of presentation, but I think that these two factors are the biggest factors if we want to use or utilize the potential which still is within these SME sectors. So the supply chains pressure and high cost, high energy prices pressure. We did, going back for a moment, at the beginning of the inviting of gaining interest of SMEs, we had a problem. SMEs were interested. Of course, it was a COVID situation. Of course, the attractiveness of online trainings is limited. So we had this problem that our trainings were not very popular. So we found that maybe we should invite supporting institutions to help us with our projects, and we might help them in return in their businesses. And we started to think what kind of institutions already have business relations with SME sector, so they are interested in selling more the stuff they are selling already. And we found out that we started to establish this kind of relations. And two institutions made a big change into our projects. One of institutions is quite big banking institutions, BNP Paribas Bank, which is willing to sell loans for energy efficiency improvements. They are strongly motivated and they have used their network of advisors to invite people for our trainings or our joint organized trainings. It was really nice cooperations. And the other institutions was a certification body which were interested in selling energy management system certifications services or ISO 50001 certificates, and also made a huge effort to support Innoveas, and it was mutually beneficial. Yeah, we both have benefits from this cooperation. So maybe this is a way of targeting the SME sector, just to find out the intermediaries which are already working with the sectors and may establish the cooperation. As Jure said, I can confirm that also in Poland, once we've been inside the SME, there was significant potential and growing interest to cooperate with our auditors in future. Nevertheless, we had to focus on costs. So the biggest interest was after we did the energy cost optimization without any investment due to the wrong mechanism they were using to buy energy, because they were not cautious that they may do it better. And that interest, that first cost savings, was the trigger which allowed further cooperation. So financial aspects, at least in Polish SMEs, was crucial, and also was crucial because SME, as other organization, has technical employees and has a financial director, and to communicate both sides, decisive is financial director, so you have to communicate to him with money language. So every measure, every idea had to be presented in euros, not in kilowatt hours, simplifying thing. We are lucky in Poland because quite a lot of years there was working energy efficiency support scheme, state scheme based on white certificates idea. It is simple scheme. It is stable over time. Not many things in Poland politically stable over time. This scheme is somehow an exemption from this rule. And because of that, it is quite attractive to use in SME sector, because it is simple and because there is it can be easily supported by the energy auditor and advisor. So we understood from this project that this kind of stable over time, easy to go financial support schemes may be also the crucial issue to grow the market of energy auditors and energy advisors which are servicing the SME market. Just because there will be small but attractive and simple to get portion of money with mutual benefits. And other thing I want to raise is the success of the first modernization motivates. Almost all cases we've been experiencing was like the first success was the big motivation to go further and search for another modernizations which can be also implemented. So, what can we do? In short, this is my final slide, don't worry, I will not talk longer. That if we want to get with knowledge to the SME sector, I think we should rather think about free of charge and short trainings adjusted to the SME scale. And most likely they should be organized in cooperation with other than energy expense institutions. We've been training this issue with banks and certification about this. I can imagine that this kind of cooperation can be established with other forms of entities which are already cooperating with the sector. Stable over time and transparent wise certificate schemes as we are lucky to have in Poland, which is also quite a market-based mechanism, is a strong advantage to believe that there will be growing market of energy auditors, but down there in SME scales, adjusted to the SME scales. And last but not least, the rising energy prices, which we are experiencing from a year from now, strongly support the energy efficiency market. So if they are more expensive, the SME is becoming more energy efficient. But let's hope that, that will be not the only right. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you, Marek. We are a little bit behind of the scheduled agenda, but we have been working on this project for 36 months, so it's not simple to summarize everything. So now, Jo from Germany, it's your turn.
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Joa Bauer from Umwelttechnik BW in Germany. We are a public agency that helps SMEs and larger companies to improve their resource efficiency. That means material efficiency and energy efficiency. And in Innoveas, we had the focus on energy efficiency. I don't have so many numbers with me, but I start with numbers. So this is our narrative. We already have talked about narratives today. And this is not a projection to the past. It's the future. And that's the slide we started each in company training. And we also had it in the In-Situ trainings. So look in the future, what happens if everybody will stay like it is, or if we become active and try to solve the attending problems. And we used these projections from the IPCC. And what was quite important for us was to show the SMEs which are the paths that come out of this. So if we want to reach the 1.5 degrees path, would mean more than 4% per year reduction of CO2 emissions or greenhouse gas emissions. So this is impossible to reach, I think. So we will surely exceed this. But nevertheless, this is one of the paths we talked about. And many enterprises, or also owners of enterprises, were surprised. They were a little bit surprised about the future and the comings. And so if we go more realistic, so let's see, that's not exactly SPT, don't ask me about the exact numbers. But also if you want to reach the 2-degree target, means about 2.5 or more reduction per year. So it's a little bit more comfortable. And that's what we talked about with the SMEs. And we also, and this was our agenda, so I start with our agenda, to show them possibilities to reach this path and to go this way. Somewhere between these two lines maybe, so to reach at least at the 2 degrees path. And what we found, and now you see no numbers, what we found in our contacts and feedbacks from the enterprises was there is a basic knowledge and awareness of the situation. They also told us, oh, I know this slide or something similar, but I didn't expect that I also have to go this path. So sometimes we heard others should do, and the politics should act. And so we came narrow to this understanding of, oh no, it's us, we have to act. So there was a basic knowledge, and they know something is going wrong, but what we also found was a very different state of knowledge and consciousness within the SMEs. So it's a very diverse, I will come back to this later. So they see there's a need to act, also after they have seen these presentations from the in-situ and in-company trainings. And they already know it, at least in Germany, if you get the weather forecast, every second day you hear something about climate warming. So this is, at least in Germany, the normal way to make weather forecasts, to talk about the warmest April since thinking and so on. But the exact way to go was not so easy for SMEs. So they are clear that they have to act, but many of them didn't know how to. So the next idea was which path are to go for the SMEs. And then we found that also here in finding the typical SME way, we found very diverse solutions. So on the one hand, we had SMEs which purchase renewable energy, and for the rest, they make some offsetting and call themselves climate neutral without having any energy management system. So this is, was very interesting for us, that there was no link between their way to make climate protection and didn't think about their energy consume. And on the other hand, we had very well developed energy management, not systems, but they did some projects, but didn't think about climate warming in the same system. So it was very diverse, and for us it was very interesting, but because I didn't expect that it could be like that, because it was our own understanding that you have to think these things together. And another point we found was, as soon it becomes operational, so specific projects with specific targets and ongoing process of improvement, it becomes more difficult because they don't find the way, which one and how to choose the right project or the right measure. Because especially in our in-situ trainings, we had many technical solutions we showed where they can save energy, and there are many options. So also there was no, from our findings, no way to make this systematic or find the priorities for different projects. And the last thing, very important, we heard it also from our research phase, no time, no resources, important problems we have to solve before we solve the energy and climate problem. So one story from this, we phoned some of our in-situ participants and asked them to take part in the in-company trainings. And there was one person who was in a web seminar about funding. And we thought, oh, okay, we called him. And he told us, oh, yes, I just wanted to know how I can get funding, but no energy solutions, no interest. So also this, we also found persons like that, which even didn't think about these things we showed in the project. And they have many other problems with Corona, we already heard about it. Market constraints, purchase of material, big problem. I think in whole Europe, not only in Germany. And also finding qualified staff. Oh, numbers. So there are still some numbers. The University of Stuttgart has an energy efficiency panel. And so this is not our result, but they ask regularly SMEs how they work this topic of energy efficiency. And this fits perfect to our main idea of strategies towards sustainable development. So on the one hand, you see on the left hand, they see most important as measures, energy efficiency measures. So this is the efficiency way. And then the second is investing in renewables, the consistency way. So, and this is also our idea, which was our vademecum, how to roll it out in companies. Look for energy efficiency and invest in renewables. So this was a part of each of our modules in the beginning. And you see this, it fits also to these findings from the University of Stuttgart. What else have we encountered? So most of them know they have to do something, so to make targets which they have to reach for energy efficiency, then find sources of wasted energy within the company, look for solutions, and have a look for renewables. So the broad way was clear, but we found also in active companies that did some measures or projects a lack how to go on with more projects, how to do it in a systematic way. So our question that arose also was, what happens with an audit in the company? They get a list, what they have to do, and maybe they do one project or none because they love their own projects more. So this was for us the point to say an energy management system could help as a systematic approach to make it continuously and to improve the company continuously. And what we also found was searching for support was very important for most of the SMEs and especially funding. So they always asked us for, oh, can this be funded and can this be funded? Even when the payback was extremely short or the overall yield was very high. Nevertheless, in Germany, maybe it's a special region of Germany, the Swabian, they are very, they like to save. So maybe funding is especially very interesting. So even when the possibilities of a project were quite well, they asked for funding. And what we also found, what is positive from my point of view, if you know the PDCA cycle of an energy management system, we always had a strong focus on the doing, on the D and the PDCA. So they always think in projects. If I have a specific project to start with and I can save energy, so I focus on this and I do this. But again, this is no continuous process for improving more and more. It's just always thinking in singular projects. So there we thought a management approach might help. And this, from my point of view, brings it together. It looks like a lot of balls they have to juggle with, but I try to explain. So it was the approach we see to strengthen the ability to act for an SME. So this is what an SME can use for itself to improve. And there we have all parts we have talked about in Innoveas. In Innoveas we have the energy data with the audit as the nucleus in the middle. And luckily in September 2021, the ISO 50005 was published. And this is very interesting, and we put it directly into the program because it's very interesting for SMEs. It's a smaller version of the 50,001. It's level-based, so each SME can choose the level in which he will invest. So from level 1 to level 4, you can improve slowly and in your own speed your energy management system. So this was the moment we said we have to promote this, and also the other multipliers are interested in promoting this energy management system, especially for SMEs. And there we have all parts we need. We have the behavior from the triangle from the beginning. The energy team on the left hand is, on the one hand, part of the management system, but also it has also the behavioral aspects. How do the persons within the company behave? Then we have the more important point for the SMEs of action, the measures. So this is also part of ISO 50005. Very important is to get aware of the own ideas, how to act. So energy policy, and especially in the in-house workshops, the participants were very happy in making this energy policy. It was just quite easy moment in this workshop, and they went out and had their energy policy written down and maybe to publish in each case for the communication. And on the right side we have targets. So there are again the SBTs, science-based targets, which path will lead to climate neutrality. And also we heard about the important role of the greenhouse gas balance. And we also talked about the scopes. And in Germany the same. In the production industry, about 80% of the emissions are scope 3. So this is very hard to work with for SMEs, but we stressed that scope 1 and 2 are the homework. So scope 1 and 2 have to be addressed by each SME, and then they can start and think about the scope 3. And then we have a complete climate management, and if you are able to juggle all these balls, then you have a systemic approach. And I think this is better. I think this is better than the ad hoc approach we found in most of the SMEs doing singular projects. Thank you.
Okay, so after hearing about the training experiences in the other countries, now I leave the floor to Uli from Germany, so we will continue. And he will talk about the researches and studies they have done on KPIs after the training we implemented in the countries.
Yeah, thank you, Mara. In that row of the different presentations from the partners here in the Innoveas project, it's now my pleasure to give you an insight, especially on the measures, on the impact of all these things which we have done in this project. So investigating the different barriers, looking into the different capacity programs in the different countries with all the obstacles and things which we have seen in the last few minutes. And with that, I just want to summarize that with some more numbers now. First of all, just to give you an insight, which KPIs we have investigated. So what is really important for us from a perspective of the project, we have 4 energy-related KPIs, which we have looked more into depth, which means we have collected a lot of information through questionnaires and summed up those information from the different partners with the companies and the persons which we have in the trainings to get an insight what they are really, what they have known before the trainings, what they have probably picked up in the trainings, and what probably should be somehow happened after the project ends. And with that energy KPI, so it's important to have a look on that. So first of all, the primary energy savings through the increased efficiency. That's one of the KPIs we have looked in The other one, of course, is on renewable energy production. So what the different companies are really willing to do with renewables, if this is an issue, and probably which they can help to get also some cost reduction at the end. Then with that, which is closely linked, the savings on CO2 emissions, not only with renewables, but also, of course, with energy efficiency measures. And finally, at the end, it's all about costs, it's about investments. And we try to get also an idea about the investments triggered by the project through these energy efficiency measures and the renewables. So those are the 4 KPIs which we have measured through these different questionnaires and so on. And it's now the time to present these results from all the trainings and all the efforts that different partners did in the last 36 months. Now, before showing you the numbers, I just want to give you an insight about the methodology, how we have quantified these numbers coming from the different resources. First of all, we have the web-based training videos. You have already heard about that. We have the in-situ trainings and the in-company trainings. And important for you now is to know about our methodology, that for the web-based training videos, we had about 12,000 views only on the training videos. So we have other videos as well, as you have already heard today. So it's about the best practices. And we have identified that with these videos, with just looking on that videos, there will be about 1,550 energy audits somehow generated later on. That's all based on some calculations linked to our in-situ trainings and the in-company trainings and the results we get from the different partners there. On the in-situ trainings, it's based from the grant agreement on the Eurostat data. We have somehow extended that with the questionnaires, which I've also said before. And we had in total now at the end 327 participating companies. So that's quite good, as you will see later on in one of the last slides. For the in-company trainings, it's a similar approach. So it's about the Eurostat data. It's about, again, the questionnaires individually filled by the different participants of the trainings and the companies, of course, and additional reports which are coming from pre-audits. So we already received some real data about what are the energy efficiency measures somehow already providing to the different companies, which is the impact already on energy savings and so on. Now, just to give you a first idea about numbers, not going into detail of all of these numbers, but if you just now cross-link the web-based in-situ and in-company trainings against these 4 KPIs, we have somehow built 2 scenarios, which means one which is more proactive, that more measures will be somehow ended up in the different companies, and one which is more pessimistic. And with that, we get that range, which you can see here. But not to bore you with all of each numbers, it's, I think, easier to go through some summaries, which means we had in total 35 training videos now. So those are all videos with 16,000 views, so more than the ones which I've said before, with this 12,000 only on the special web-based training videos. We have 49 courses where we trained these 327 companies. And the participating companies want to achieve energy savings in a range of about 11 to 25%. So per company per year, which is, from my perspective, quite interesting. And again, the increase also of the use of renewables will be in a range between 6 to 18%, which is, I think, also a number where counts at the end also to the savings and which really helps to overcome all these things which we've heard before raised by the different partners in the different countries. Yeah, at the end, we want to save CO2 emissions. And with that, per company and per year, we are an average value between 300 to 1,000 ton of CO2, depending, of course, on the size of the different companies and so on. So that's just an average number, just to give you an idea what we have achieved and what is really the impact at the end of this Innoveas project. Now, to sum up all that, it's important that we also somehow compare our numbers, which we have achieved now, with the goals which we have written down in our grant agreement when we have started that project. And You can see on the right-hand side in this graph of the 4 KPIs, again, the red line, which is on 100%, so that's the bottom line, what we wanted to achieve for different 2 scenarios, so worst case, best case again. And finally, we have to say that with all the efforts which the different partners did, we've reached all of our 4 KPIs, so we already achieved the threshold of this 100%, if you compare that to the grant agreement numbers. And for some of the KPIs, especially then about renewables, we are about 700% above that, which means there are much more efforts will be done, especially by the companies. That's quite interesting. And also the investments triggered then again through these different measures. It's much higher than we have expected at the beginning of the project, and with all this work and efforts the different partners did. And with that, I wanted to close this short summary. If you are interested, of course, there will be reports available where you can get more details about all those numbers. But I think that's a good message that, especially with all the efforts in the capacity building program, which is will be still online on our website, you have the chance to get an insight really on the different aspects which we have investigated and then bring into the market here for energy efficiency measures in Europe for SMEs. So thanks for your attention.
Free. Thank you. Now I call on stage Marzia and Livio, who are the last in presence speakers. First of all, we will. Okay.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, first of all, for the invitation. I'll try to be short and concise given the time. I am Livio De Chicchis. I work for the Italian Federation for Energy Efficiency, which is a no-profit association that deals with energy efficiency and sustainability topics. We also manage the Energy Manager database in Italy, so we have a perspective of the energy sector at the national level, at the European level, through the involvement in many European projects. So our core business is energy efficiency, and my today's presentation will be focused on the energy efficiency, so no surprise on this. Energy efficiency is probably the main pillar of the energy transition that we want to reach in the next years. There are many components in the energy transition, but energy efficiency is a key one. Is a key, and perhaps is also the least obvious. Why? Why is important, first of all, and I want to point out two perspectives on this field. The first comes from European Commission, which has established the energy efficiency first principle, which will be also inserted into the energy efficiency directive request in the next request. Be careful, energy efficiency first doesn't mean that energy efficiency is the most important of the components, but means that in each decision, being at a policy level or at a company level, who decide, the decision, has to take into account the energy efficiency in their choice. So ensure that energy efficiency is taken into account in each decision. This is the energy efficiency first principle. We can speak about this for a day, perhaps, but to summarize, this is the concept. The other perspective comes from the International Energy Agency that says that energy efficiency is the first fuel. In other words, the energy that you save is an energy that you avoid to buy or to produce, very simply. And in the scenario to 2030 and 2050, but in 2030 in particular, energy efficiency together with renewables, mostly solar and wind, plays a key role. But when coming from the words to the deeds, energy efficiency is rarely taken into account, beginning from a policy level, as it was brilliantly pointed out in the interventions that came before mine. In the actual context, and I limit the analysis to Italy, for example, but I think also in other countries, but focusing on Italy, in the actual context, to face this increase in energy price, we talk about increase the diversified gas furniture or other topics, but not about energy efficiency. Also, Italian government is making an effort to cut some tax component in our energy bills to refresh and to fight this increase in energy costs, but we rarely speak about energy efficiency. So that would be a structural measure to address the energy increase, the energy price increase, and not just a conjunctural one, as it can be these refreshments. This happens because energy efficiency is complex. It's complex for a set of reasons. Just pointing out some of them, there are many technical solutions within energy efficiency, and it's difficult to measure energy efficiency. It's difficult to measure an energy saving, because if we think to a renewable energy source, it's easy to measure a productivity of a renewable plant. But measure an energy saving, it means to measure the ex-ante consumption, measure ex-post consumption, and normalize the two set of values. So it's an indirect measure and it's complex, as well as, and also this topic has been already mentioned, it's difficult to sell energy efficiency in sustainability reports. So we have to think not only to a technological point of view, but also to enlarge the framework of energy efficiency. I have summarized 5 main points to trying to explain what is energy efficiency. The first is the more obvious one, but not always is it is respected, because avoid the waste and inefficient use. Just to make an example, we can replace, we can renovate the lighting system, we can install the most efficient lamp, but if we keep the light on during the night, of course, we are not making an energy saving, we are not making an energy efficiency. Then there is the substitution of technology, the replacement of technology. And once we have minimized energy demand, we can switch to, we can cover, the demand through renewable sources and not by fossil ones. Then there are the last 2 points that are the points that can make this rethinking, this process of rethinking energy efficiency, not included in itself, but enlarging this framework. So the first is the change in behavior and in demand reduction, and the last point, which is also the most complex, is to trying to rethink the products and service from a sustainable perspective. And to achieve this goal, it's necessary to take into account the multiple benefits of energy efficiency, the externality of energy efficiency. So those benefits that happens when we perform an energy efficiency measure, but are not directly measured through the energy saving. So for example, if we reduce the greenhouse gases emission, for example, for an enterprise that is subject to the emission trading system, it's an economic saving, but it's not often accounted in a business plan following an energy efficiency intervention. This is just one example. We can speak about the comfort for the users, the major productivity that becomes from an energy efficiency intervention. These are what we call the multiple benefits, and trying to identify, first of all, them and to evaluate, giving also a quantification of those values, can allow to link the energy efficiency with the value proposition of a company, the value proposition, and consequently with the core business of a company. This is a business model canvas, is a tool that is often used by companies to have a snapshot of their main features in terms, for example, of value proposition, of key activities, customers, cost and revenue streams. The goal, the aim of this kind of analysis is to rethink this business model, in particular the value proposition, in a sustainability way. So, passing from just looking at the economic and economic revenues and limiting energy efficiency to itself, to link energy efficiency with the core business. And it's possible identifying this externality, these multiple benefits. So to conclude, if we use the energy in an efficient way, we can have companies more productive, more comfortable and healthier for the end users and for the workers themselves of the companies. We can have safer companies that impacts less on the society. And of course, we can reduce the economic expenditure of the enterprises themselves. This is my email. If you have any kind of questions or comments also in the next days, you can contact me. And I thank you for the attention.
Okay, so wait. Livio is here for a double reason, because now we have a space for the sister projects. We've been collaborating with them. They have similar projects, but with different sectors. And Livio is also representing one of them, which is the Smes project. Okay, so here you go.
This is not a one-man show, but I'm here also in quality of partner of the Smes project, which is one of the sister projects of Innoveas one. The Smes is the aim of the Smes project is to support the small and medium enterprises in performing energy audits and energy management system. So in doing energy efficiency with a particular focus on energy audit and energy management system. The coordinator of the project is, ESCCP. We FIRE, together with Stogesca, we are Italian partners. So the path of the Smes project is double. So there is one path dedicated to companies. So as I was saying, to implement energy audits and energy management systems in a multiple benefits view. So I was I was talking about multiple benefits. We try to include this multiple benefits analysis into energy audit, first of all, and into energy management system. So support company to implement this kind of tools, including the multiple benefits. The other path is directed to the authorities. So there is also an institutional path of the project that supports member state to implement the Article 8 of Energy Efficiency Directive, the future Article 7, because it will be modified in the recast directive. This is the methodology through which we are trying to do both our goals. What we have done so far, for the companies, for the national authorities, we have made a recognition basing on sharing experience and on best practices implemented in the member states. We have made a recognition about the main barriers for the national authorities for the implementation of this Article 8. We have collected some experience both for the obligation of Article 8 for the non-Smes, both with the Smes, so the voluntary energy audits and energy management system implementation. This is the link to the document which collects this experience. For the companies, we are planning some trainings. We have, first of all, developed a methodology to perform this energy audit in a multiple benefits view. And now we are performing trainings, both basic ones addressed to the small and medium enterprises, both some advanced trainings in which methodology is explained, and this is this is addressed both to the small and medium enterprise, but also to the operators that supports, in many cases, the enterprises in doing energy efficiency. I think energy managers, energy experts, energy service companies. So in the next month, we'll perform this training, and we invite you to follow also this sister project. I really thank you for the attention, and I leave the floor to Mark. I think I have to escape because I have my train for Rome. So
thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Okay, so we can go on with the sister project. We have 4 sister projects. I don't know if you are still connected. The first one should be Professor Zanoni from ACCEE project. Can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you allow me to share the screen? Thanks. Okay, thank you very much. I think that now you can see my screen. Can you give confirmation to me?
Yes, now yes.
Okay, great. So thank you very much for having this opportunity to present also sister project of Innoveas. I'm the coordinator of IC project, a founded project on the same line of Innoveas, and I'm from University of Brescia. So this project started in 1st September 2019 and will end on 13 August this year, 2022. As I said, it is coordinated by University of Brescia, and there is also a spread variety of different partners pertaining to different research institute, university, company, association, providing a wide participation from research community and of course from industry. What is IC? First of all, let me give you the acronym name is Improving Cold Chain Energy Efficiency. So the main target companies of the project are small and medium enterprises acting in the cold chain of food and beverage. The project brings mainly 2 pillars. The first pillar is the development of an analytical energy efficiency tool so as to facilitate investment and decision making for companies pertaining to the food and beverage sector. And the second pillar is the capacity building program again according to other sister projects, so as to accelerate change in the energy culture. So the main aim of the tool is to allow users to estimate energy performance of a cold chain, so switching from the single actor perspective to the cold chain perspective, as one of previous presentation under Innoveas underlined how the value chain contributes significantly to the final energy efficiency. The four main themes of the project are supply chain approach, the life cycle analysis and life cycle costing, and we have also included the non-energy benefit and behavioral aspects, as well as financial aspect and funding opportunities, so as to accelerate the change in mind, and especially important for small and medium enterprises. Just let me give you a brief overview of what is the overall cold chain perspective in the project. First of all, if we map the energy efficiency of a series of three actors on the supply chain, of course, starting from an initial solution, given here in the graph as 100%, of course, with a myopic single actor, so the darker green, you can achieve for both the actors energy efficiency approach, where you can achieve, let's say, a less energy consumption with a myopic perspective. While perceiving a systemic supply chain, as you can see, some actors may experience larger benefits, while other actors can experience no additional benefits. But as you can see, the most important aspect is to look at the supply chain perspective. So if you look at the right side of the figure, where you can see that using and with an overall cost perspective, you can achieve additional savings. Of course, harmonizing intervention and of course, reducing barriers and looking at the most important actors over the chain. So what we have implemented, first of all, we started the project with a set of national trainings. Of course, we have provided 18 workshops, mainly provided in a remote way due to pandemic situation. So we started only a few months before the pandemic spread, and we have 18 remote workshops with close to 1,500 participants. Those national trainings were focused mainly on the technical aspects of energy efficiency in cold chain, looking at intervention mainly on specific company perspective. And we will see later that we have also implemented an e-learning platform in 8 languages. So we have ended with 271 trained people, and the e-learning platform is still available. So I invite you to take a look on it. And of course, as I said in the pillar slide, we have developed a toolbox with 7 different tools, with the main tools related to the cold supply chain. That is currently the most important tool, where a set of companies can input their consumption and look at possible strategies. And with the usage of the toolbox, we are in the way of performing EU workshops. So we have a set of 8 EU workshops. We have already provided 5 EU workshops applying to 5 different supply chains up to now, the tool, and we have already provided and obtained significant results and feedback from companies. Of course, the tool is also freely available on the project website, and the tutorial on the tool is available on YouTube. We have also put in place an industry informative network available in the website of the project, where technology offers and technology demands in a specific area of cold chain in terms of technologies to enhance environmental efficiency in that specific sector where, of course, they can match, so proposal can be uploaded, or request can be also uploaded, and the moderator can match request and offers. We are, as I said, still in the processing and still in the organization of the workshop, where the tool has been applied or will be applied to additional 3 supply chains, and we are collecting results of the impacts of the overall projects. And the final event of this IC project will be in Brussels on 28th of June, and it will be face-to-face meeting. And if you go to the project website, I also invite to take part to this final project. It is free for all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to have presented also this project in our event.
Thank you, Professor Zanoni, and thank you also for the invitation. Now we have Erudino Güemes from E2 Driver project. Can you hear us?
Hello, Mara, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I am going to try to share my screen because I think that I found the way. So, oh, could you please enable me to share my screen, please?
Yes, they are doing.
Okay, now I think it's working. Okay, can you see my screen?
Not yet. Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. So, first of all, I would like to introduce myself. I am Erudino Llano. I'm the coordinator of the E2 Driver project, and I'm part of CIRTE Foundation, which is a research center that is placed in Zaragoza in Spain. Okay, so let's go with the explanation of the E2 Driver project. E2 Driver project is a project that was founded by the Horizon 2020, like all the project that has been presented here. It started in 2019, and it's going to end this year, and indeed this month. This month, in May 2022, we are going to finish the project. And the coordination is played by CIRTE Foundation, and the objective of the project is, in the end, to try to boost the energy efficiency and also the awareness in energy auditing in the small and medium enterprises of the European automotive sector. We are a project that is totally focused on this single sector. Sorry, so we are completely working with only automotive companies. And the project has been working in 4 countries: in Germany, Spain, France, and Italy. And the project has been possible thanks to the participation of 12 partners, and the majority of them are part of those 4 countries. And we have an additional partner, and that is from Greece, which is Merit, and is the partner that is in charge of the exploitation, design, and so on. But in general, the general approach that we have followed in the partners is that per country, per pilot country, we have 1 training entity and 1 national association. That's so that we are able to involve companies thanks to the contacts that have the national associations, and we are also able to implement the E2 Driver solution thanks to the work of the training entities. Okay. In order to contextualize a little bit, which is the reason that we started this project, we did it because by sure, and then the number of the energy audits that are implemented in small and medium enterprises in the European Union is not as bigger than that we would like to, and due to the fact that they are not forced by law to perform these energy audits. So the only way that we have in order to encourage these companies, these small and medium enterprises, to perform these energy audits is through the make them aware which are the benefits of this energy audit. So for that reason, we have designed a solution that is composed by training and also awareness session and by sure some advice in different aspects like the design of energy efficiency measures for their facilities. The each driver solution, so taking into account this need to make the small and medium enterprises more aware about the benefits of the energy auditing, we have designed this solution, which is composed by mainly two pillars. So the first one is a capacity building program, where we make companies and employees a customized capacity building program for them. So we select first different key people in their company in order to train them and provide them with the necessary skills in order to identify and eventually implement energy efficiency measures. And also we have also performed different awareness actions with the general employees, with the general technicians of the different companies, in order to make them aware how much is how important is their daily work in terms of energy efficiency behavior and so on. Once we perform the capacity building program, which we have a specific point when we work with the companies how to identify potential energy efficiency measures, we start with the post-training consultancy. In the post-training consultancy, we help the companies to identify energy efficiency measures, to support them in the implementation of these measures, and eventually also we help them in the definition of the strategy that they could implement in mid-term or long-term in the final implementation of all the measures that have been eventually identified during the implementation of the solution. Okay, so going through a little bit in deep into the each driver solution, as I said before, it is composed by first part, which is a capacity building program. This capacity building program is a blended learning format, so we have part of the training online and part on-site. In order to implement the online part, we use the e-learning each driver platform, which is an open access platform. So by sure, if you are interested in see a little bit more how has been done this training, you can by sure go there and register. And the training is customizable, so we have customized the training thanks to the design of specific face-to-face sessions with the companies, and also in the platform we have integrate an algorithm where we make the trainees the possibility to perform a small questionnaire, and so that they are going to receive the appropriate training materials that they have to learn in order to improve their profile. So taking into account this customization process, we have defined mainly 4 profiles. So one for managers, one for engineers, one for technical managers, and the last one for technicians. And this last one, the technicians receive, the reality is that they receive an awareness session instead of a real capacity building program, because we thought that they would be need a real training in terms of daily possibilities in terms of energy behavior and so on. Okay, so the training is also supported by different tools. We have defined it we have designed and create 3 tools. And the first one is the virtual reality exercise. The virtual reality exercise is a practical exercise that we have implemented with the companies, where we teach the trainees how to perform energy measures in an electrical cabinet. And the other ones are the energy self-assessment tool and the financial assessment tool, which are 2 tools where we give the companies the possibility to perform different measures in their energy in their energy process. Okay. So once we have finished the training part, as I said before, we start with a post-training consultancy where we identify the potential energy efficiency measures. We support them in the estimation of the eventual impact that these measures could have, and also we support them in the definition of the strategy in order to finally implement these energy efficiency measures. And okay, so taking into account this solution, as I said before, we are in the last month of our project. So until now we have trained 35 companies, which is very close to the project objective. We have trained around 250 or 300 workers. Sorry for not being able to provide indefinite numbers, but the reality is that now we are calculating the real impact of the project. We have until now trained 25 external trainers in order to make able the life of the project beyond of the end of the project. So we have trained different trainers in Italy, in Spain, in Latin America, and also we expect to train also trainers in France and Germany. Our first estimation is that we are going to get more or less 2.7 million euros years of savings and 3.5 kilotons of emissions avoided. Okay, having these impacts in mind, here in this slide you can see the different results that we have get during the project. We can divide it into tangible results and intangible results. So regarding the tangible one, we have developed an In-Situ driver platform that I have mentioned it before. It's an e-learning platform, a guide for trainers, where is explained the whole methodology of the project, so that we enable the future trainers to have a guide in order to implement the In-Situ driver solutions even beyond of the end of the project. We have also developed a repository of training materials in five languages, which can be found in the In-Situ driver platform. We have developed the self-assessment tools, the virtual reality experience, a best practice book, and a tracking tool that will help the companies to monitor the possibility of the implementation of their energy efficiency measures. And regarding the intangible results, we have been able to train, as I said in the previous slide, several companies and workers. We have had also a great social and economic and environmental impact. We have implemented different pedagogical innovations like the ontological flip teaching and the customization tool. And we have been able to to create an alliance not only between the entities that are part of the project, but also with external entities, which has been even great. So okay, so thank you very much. This is my name and this is my email address. So obviously, if you have doubts or you want to know something about the project, be free to contact me. And yes, before finish, thank you very much, Mara, for inviting me and for give us the opportunity to present our projects in your final event. Thank you very much.
Thank you. thank you, Erudino, very much for sharing with us the results of your project. We now have Agnese Riccetti for the Smes Power project.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, good, good. Shall I share my screen like the other two?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Can you see it all right?
Yes.
Good. Thank you. Sorry, I think my audio doesn't work, so I cannot hear you very well, but hopefully you can hear me okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Agnese Riccetti, and I work for Energiata, a company based in Rome, which is a project partner for SME and power efficiency. So, first of all, on behalf of the whole consortium, SME and Power Consortium, of course, a big thank you to the Innoveas friend who has invited us. We're very happy to be here. So, just moving quickly through the project, as per the other sister project, we started in September 2019, so we are very close to the end, final rush in the final months. We are 10 partners spread in 8 countries that goes more or less from east to west, from north to south of Europe. And the project coordinator is actually the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. As the project says, as the name of the project says, SME Empowers wants to empower SMEs to reduce their energy consumption. So the idea is to push them to undergo energy audits, to become more familiar with the energy topics and the concept, to give the opportunities for them to check the funding opportunity and to implement energy saving measures. And what we do practically, the project in 3 years aims to provide education and training courses, short trainings focused specifically on SMEs, and in particular the personnel of SMEs and the decision makers of SMEs, and then work directly with these SMEs through a series of also targeted workshops and also providing support and consultation, and so to enabling them and becoming more familiar with the energy efficiency directive already mentioned before. In terms of practical results, the outcomes are training handbooks in 7 languages, a web platform for energy analytics, and then some monitoring and targeting and measuring and verification tools available for everyone. Where we are now, these are and what have been the outputs so far. So we have done 3 targeted workshops in each partner countries, of course, not in total, so 24. We have a framework analysis report that has been concluded, and then a publication of the funding mechanism report, investigation on certification schemes, and a publication for policy recommendation. All these are public documents that are available on our website and will be there, of course. Then in terms of the education and training course, which was one of the biggest actions that happened during these last 2 years and is still ongoing, closing in these days, we designed the Energy and Tea program that is, as I said, has been concluded, but almost concluded in some countries. Then we have realized the training handbooks in 7 languages as expected, and we are now in the 3rd edition of the energy and training courses. Each energy and training course also foreseen a practical action with SMEs that are volunteering as a pilot cases. So in terms of crunching numbers, I'm not going through all the numbers you can see here. Maybe just it's worth mentioning that like all the others, we also faced the pandemic challenge and the unfortunately unlucky events, recent events. But we tried really to turn this in an opportunity, and still our results are quite satisfying. We managed to create a network to reach more than 900 people, 146 SMEs, and so on and so forth. This is only for the first 2 editions. We still need to evaluate the final numbers of the results from the energy and training courses and programs and the short trainings for the 3rd editions in the 8 countries. So we expect to have bigger number soon. In terms of available resources and tools, in our results webpage, you can find the already mentioned training handbook in 7 languages, and then there is an open training areas. You just need to register to it. And then also the already mentioned MNT and MMB tools are available, both in an offline version that is downloadable and usable by energy experts or people interested or SMEs, but there is also an online version. And finally, there is also guidelines to use these tools. So just remain in a pattern of training visions. I just close in reminding that together with all these training and education activities, of course, we had also a big campaign in terms of communications. Our website is available in 7 languages, the partner languages. We have published 3 newsletters and 3 press releases, which 1 more to come. We have successfully collaborated with our 6 sister projects, and we're very pleased for that. And last but not least, we have on our website an open source with all the project outcomes that is available for download and consultation. This is just a reminder of who we are. Our consortium, as already shown in the map before. This is it from our side. Thank you very much again for your attention, and please feel free to get in touch if you want to learn more. Thank you.
Thank you, Agnese. Thank you very much. And now I call the last sister project. Ruchi Agrawal should be here to present the Speedier project. Can you hear us?
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, yes.
Okay, so yeah, allow me a minute to enable my screen sharing.
Yeah, is a little bit.
Yeah, can you see my screen now?
We can't hear you very well. We can see the screen, but the audio is not that good.
Now is it okay? Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
No, we cannot understand.
Can you see my screen properly?
Yes, we can see the screen, but the audio is not good.
Okay, so first of all, I will introduce myself. I am Ruchi Agrawal from International Energy Research Center. We are based in Cork, and we are the coordinator of Speedier project. So to start with, Speedier is a highly innovative one-stop solution that provides energy audit, energy management, and it provides information, advice, capacity building, and implementation of energy efficiency solutions, along with monitoring the impact from the implemented energy efficiency solutions. So the Speedier project was set with objectives to facilitate the uptake of energy audits and implement the suggested suggested energy conservation measures for the SMEs, and it advocates an innovative self-financing mechanism which requires no to very little investment from the SMEs to start with implementing the energy efficiency upgrades. And so the one of the objective was to demonstrate the effectiveness of this new mechanism. The other objectives, as mentioned here, is to enhance the energy culture and demonstrate the speedier service as innovative tool, and also last but not the least, to increase the skills of the energy market stakeholders. So to start with speedier, so as we know, European Union has set a target of improvement of energy efficiency by 32.5% by 2030, and the Article 8 of Energy Efficiency Directive, it requires member states to take action and assist SMEs to incentivize and so that they can undertake energy audits and energy efficiency improvements. And we have a large share of energy SMEs in energy market. So we can say SMEs have a large potential for achieving these targets. So to start the project, what we did first is we conducted an online survey from the experts and SMEs, and we have tried to identify a list of barriers which acts as a barrier for implementing the energy efficiency measures at SME level. So we found that lack of finance, lack of time, lack of knowledge, lack of priority. These were some barriers which stand out most. And Speedier is helping SMEs to overcome these barriers with the help of Speedier experts. So basically some energy experts will act as a Speedier expert, and they will provide the Speedier service, and they will implement the Speedier self-financing mechanism, and they will remove all the hassles of in-house and all the hassles of energy efficiency implementation. So what is self-financing mechanism? So here the self-financing mechanism starts with implementing the no-cost measures. For example, changing the electricity suppliers, or turning down the thermostats for 1 to 2, or from 1 to 2 degrees, and so on. So then whatever savings you are getting, then we will use that saving to implement the higher cost, and basically we will have a virtual circle of energy saving, and which will be used for implementing higher cost measures, and the Speedier expert or energy expert will be paid via the saving reaped from the cycle.
Ruchi,
so how Speedier, I think they should have how Speedier remove these barriers, the barriers which we have identified with the help of these ring financing mechanism, where SMEs don't have to upfront invest a lot of money, and SMEs can outsource their energy management to an external energy expert who will advise them with the suitable energy efficiency measures, along with some financial advice as well. So this is the Speedier procedure, where an energy expert will engage with SMEs, then they will identify the suitable opportunities for the energy efficiency implementation. They will implement, they will review, they will build a trust, and they will repeat the procedure. So this is the Speedier process, we can say. So the Speedia project, it has been completed in November 2021. So this is the impacts we have achieved through this project. And some of the main features of the project was 30-month duration with 2.165 million of budget, and we had 9 partners all across from the 4 countries. And the Speedier process, the Speedier mechanism was piloted in 4 countries, and the target sectors were different in all 4 countries. In Ireland, it was industrial sector. In Spain, all the companies hosted in a business park, rented business park. It was there. In Italy, it was kind of mixed approach where all the sectors were involved, and in Romania, hospitality sector was involved. So basically, this ensured that the Speedier is effective in all the sectors. And here, I think this is the consortium members. That's all from my side. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ruchi, for the presentation. See you at the last meeting of the other sister projects. Okay, so last but not least, final presentation, the last partner of Innoveas project. So, Confindustria Bergamo, we have here the presentation.
Thank you, Mara. Good evening. So finally, let's go back to Innoveas project. I promise I'll be short in providing you with an overview of the Business Alliance for Climate and Sustainable Energy, which has been thought from the project partners as the most suitable way to conclude, but at the same time to continue with the project activities. Let's start from a question. So why we need a European alliance? As we also heard about from the previous speech, the market is highly fragmented. We have on one side small and medium enterprise that, of course, have their own business to run, and most of them are still too far from the adoption of energy efficiency measure. And we have energy audits on one other side that are sometimes ineffective. There are plenty of technological offer. And the same is for when we talk about policymakers and institutions. Sometimes their offering is not that aligned with what a real company needs. So it is clear how companies struggle in approaching the energy efficiency journey, and they would like to be supported by a trustful organization along the whole journey. So here comes the role of the Business Alliance, and first of all, the role of the Innoveas project that started 3 years ago in the study of the barriers that we heard during also the previous speech and the round tables. And the Innoveas project developed the capacity building program that has been a tailored program according to the specific company needs. So the main purpose of the alliance is, first of all, to assure the sustainability of this capacity building program and ensure guaranteeing the legacy of the project network that has been established during the past 36 months. The most important goal of the Alliance is to support small and business enterprises in approaching their energy transition path towards the net zero, of course, and being also a referent initiatives. We heard about plenty of European initiatives, and of course it is clear how a company cannot understand and cannot follow all the offer that is provided both at a European and at a local level. So the Business Alliance founded by the Innoveas project want to become a real reference initiatives for all those companies in our ecosystem, with the final ultimate goal, of course, to accelerate the practices to reach the net zero by 2050. In order to do so, we need to involve several stakeholders with several expertise from the academic side to the industrial one, starting from the Innoveas project partners that are the initial and founding members of the Alliance. Innoveas project partners are mainly training institutions and also business support organization and industrial association. Of course, the goal is to enrich the alliance with other strategic stakeholders active in the energy fields, from both the academic side with the involvement of a university research center, but also, and most in particular, the involving industrial association, energy consortium, energy cluster that are actually the voice of the companies. And why not also, of course, big enterprises that can be the leader for best practical adoption in the energy efficient path, like the lighthouse that are able to foster small and medium enterprise in adopting energy efficiency measures. I can also say that our goal is also to involve not only the academic and the industry, since we heard that energy transition is not only a matter of technology, but it's also a matter of culture and a matter of policies. So the goal will also to involve the so-called quadruple helix sectors, so not only academic, industry, but also the community, to foster people and companies change culture, and policymakers in order to align their priorities, what company actually need. So the Business Alliance for Climate and Sustainable Energy is mainly a strategic network, a partnership of stakeholders committed to support small and medium enterprise, firstly, having this common goal in reaching the high-level objectives, European objectives towards climate and energy transition. And of course, it is also the institutional framework through which Innoveas partners want to assure the sustainability of the capacity building program. Several are the activities that are foreseen to be implemented by the Alliance, starting from the formal closure of the project. Here we call the services. They are actually under discussion by the partners in a more deeper analysis. But I can summarize the main activities in this free box, mainly, of course, training activities, considering that the capacity building programs has been the core of the project. And we also saw in the previous presentation the great outcomes and the great advantages that partners were able to provide to the companies within their ecosystem, but also activities like visibility and networking. So partners are willing to continue working together, organizing events that on one side are meant to facilitate the sharing of information coming from European initiatives, since, as we said, the companies get lost and they need to be supported by a trustful network. But also I can say that with a mixed top-down and bottom-up approach, partners are willing to organize events with roundtables where maybe companies can highlight what are the real needs, and in this way we can also, the Alliance can also act as a lever to support policymakers in providing the right priorities. And of course also managing activities that are meant to ensure the sustainability of the capacity building program. Last but not least, how are we going to implement this alliance? So the form of the alliance has been deeply under discussion about the project partners, and we discussed about the different forms of how to implement the alliance, and for the time being partners agreed that the most suitable way was the signature of a memorandum of understanding. That is basically our manifesto, or our way to then implement our manifesto, where partners and the core members of the Alliance commit to further collaborate and implement the activities that they consider to be relevant for their networks. We also brought physically the memorandum, the original memorandum, here to the conference with the already collected signatures from all the partners. And an important thing is that the memorandum is not closed, and the alliance itself is not restricted to the partners only, But our goal is to involve all the strategic stakeholders that have been already engaged within the project and that realize to be core for supporting the companies and through the implementation of the Innoveas project activities. So to conclude, I can say that the Alliance is our way to assure the sustainability of the Innoveas project, but also is our way to having an increased number of companies approaching climate and sustainable transition in order to achieve the European goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the last presentation of today. Maybe I think President of IPLE would like to say a few words of closure of this event.
Little. Thanks for visiting. Congratulations for the work done for this interesting project. See you tomorrow for goodbye. Bologna, very, very good. Buona serata. Ciao, ciao. Grazie a voi.
Thank you to all the participants, both in presence and online. With the partners, we will see tomorrow for discussing the last part and details of the project. Thank you. Bye.
Ciao a tutti.